Good evening. We're about to start this meeting for September 19th of the Sumner County Board of Education. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Anyone who'd like to join me, please feel free to do so. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tom got set in chair again. All right, first item on the agenda is called to order. We've called it to order. Mr. Johnson, do you have the roll?
Yes, sir.
All right, next item on the agenda is election of a school board chairman for the 2023-2024 term. The procedure is I'll open the floor for nominations. You'll just turn your light on, say I'd like to nominate so-and-so, and I'll ask that person if they will serve if elected. If they say yes, we'll move forward. If not, then that nomination will fail.
I'd like to nominate so-and-so. That's what you just said. I'd like to nominate Mr. Brewer if he'll repeat as chairman.
All right, I will serve if elected. Mr. Lacy, I believe I saw you next.
I'd like to nominate Stephen King.
Would you serve if elected? Yes. All right. Ms. Graham, your light went on.
My nominations.
Okay. Okay. The next item, the next thing we do is vote. I was nominated first, so we vote with me first. Sometimes they do it alphabetically. Brewer would come before King, so either way, we vote. So all in favor of Tim Brewer being chairman for 23-24, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
The noes, please raise your hand so we can get it on the record. Got that, Mr. Chairman? Elect Tim Brewer for chairman for 23-24. Next item on the agenda is election of board education vice chair for 23-24. Nominations. Ms. Andrews.
I'd like to nominate Tammy Hayes. I believe she's done a great job, and I would like to continue her, see her continue in that service.
Ms. Hayes, will you serve if elected?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Lacy.
I'd like to nominate Alan Lancaster.
Mr. Lancaster, will you serve if elected? He says yes, he will. First one was Ms. Hayes. All in favor of Ms. Hayes being vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Raise your hand so he can get the, okay, got him. All right, Ms. Hayes will be the vice chair for the 2023 term. Next item on the agenda is adoption of the regular agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Mr. Daniels, second by Mr. Wise. Mr. Lacy?
Item number 16, can we move that to further discussion? And the bids and purchases?
Item number 16, we will move that to, no, this is the regular agenda.
Mr. King, you're talking about the Rangers?
Yes.
The post. It's number 16 on the, Mr. Brewer, it's number 16 on the consent agenda under the bids.
So consent agenda, we haven't got to the consent agenda yet. So we need to wait.
Okay, he's just asking.
Yeah.
I think he's asking.
Well, I think you would have to pull it off of here to get it to the regular agenda.
Well, we're voting on the regular agenda as we speak.
Yeah, I think you have to do that before. I think. I'm sorry, sure.
Well, I'm confused too, so.
Sorry.
So what you're wanting to pull off is on the consent agenda.
You're all right, I'd like to move it down where we can discuss it and then vote on it.
Okay, well, hang on to that. Let's do the regular agenda, and then when we get to consent agenda, then we'll do that.
But if we vote on it now, we can't unvote on it, can we?
You can take it out.
You can take that on the consent. Yeah, we just need to approve the regular agenda first.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Mr. Brewer, one more. I actually do believe that is correct, that if we're going to approve the agenda, we need to pull it from the consent, add it to the agenda. We can add it to new business item 3.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're exactly right.
And then we
Yeah, you're
will,
exactly
and then
right.
we would approve the agenda that way and then go through.
Right, okay, so let's put that on item number 3 under new business. And now we vote on the
Let's do it.
Regular agenda.
I've got a
Mr.
motion as well,
Mr.
please.
Lancaster.
Item number 3 on unfinished business on the leaves of absence. I can't say that, but anyway, we were supposed to have a training with TSBA that got postponed. I would really like to postpone this till next month. I'm signed up for that next Wednesday. I just want to make sure when we make that policy that we have all the I's dotted and T's crossed and know exactly when the goes into effect and all that stuff. And I reached out to TSBA yesterday to see if I could get any information and haven't got anything yet. So if we could just move that until fully in favor of doing it, but I just want to make sure we got the parameters correct before we vote on the policy.
So we're on adoption of regular agenda. I'm trying to get my head where we're at. And on number 16 on the regular agenda, we're going to move that to item number 3.
I think when we get to that,
But it's on the agenda, so we have to get it off the agenda. So we move that to item number 3 as well, and then when we get that, we motion to defer it. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay. All right, if there be no objection, we'll do that. And what item was that, Mr. Lancaster?
It's unfinished business number 3.
Okay, I'm looking at new business, unfinished business number 3. All right. With the exception of those 2 items, is there a motion to approve? Motion approved by Mr. Lancaster, second by Mr. King. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We do have an agenda. Next item on the agenda is adoption of consent agenda. A motion to approve, but we want to change yours
motion approved as amended.
as amended. Okay.
Second.
Motion approved as amended by Ms. Andrews, second by who? Mr. King? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Let me make me a note back here so I don't miss that. Y'all help me keep up with that when the time comes. Okay. Next item on the agenda is consideration of minutes, discussion and action regarding the minutes of the August 22nd regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Motion approved by Mr. Lancaster, second by Ms. Hayes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item, discussion and action regarding the minutes of the August 31st regular meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Mr. Daniels,
Second.
second by Mr. Lacy, I believe. He was just a second late. Yeah, Mr. Lacy. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is hearing and delegations, recognition of hearing and delegations. We have, first on the list tonight is Mr. Charles Haygood. Come on, if you would come up there to the podium. I hate to make you do that with your foot. If you would turn your light on and give your name and address for the record.
Okay.
You'll be speaking on the amendment to the general purpose budget in item number 4, I believe.
Appreciate your patience. No one's had more patience than my wife over the last month. So anyway, sorry for the delay. Good evening. I'm Charles Haygood. I live at 225 South Thompson Road in Goodlettsville. It's about 1.5 miles from Beach High School. Around our area, we like to call it Shackle Island. So that's the area in which I live. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I consider it a privilege to be here with members of our community. We have lots of folks from the beach community here tonight, and we look forward to discussing the topics of education, educators, athletics, the stadiums, and the role that these all play in our communities. And we look forward to moving forward as a county in a thoughtful and deliberate way, both for the midterm and the long term, as well as some of our more urgent needs that we have. as a community. I'm here tonight as a vested member of the community, also as a parent. I have been involved in lots of different fundraisers over the years. I've served as chairman of our Beach Foundation and booster clubs, etc. And I like to tell folks that when my freshman son graduates in 3 years, hopefully, I would have had a kid on that corner at Beach for 32 continuous years. I think that deserves some kind of award, Dr. Langford, at graduation. Most of all, I'm a parent of past Beach students as well, and I've seen a lot in that 30 plus years go extremely well. I've seen some things that I'm really proud of, and I've seen some things that I'm not so proud of. But one thing that I am proud of, and I think I'm speaking on behalf of all of our community members here tonight, is that we're proud to be a part of the Beach community, but more importantly, we're proud to be a part of Sumner County. You guys have a tough job. You have to make a lot of tough decisions. I know it's not easy and for the faint of heart, but we know, and I know, that the education of our kids comes first. We have different thoughts about how we go about that, but I do know deep in my heart that the sacrifices that you guys make mean that you see education first and foremost, most importance to our community. We're grateful for the efforts demonstrated also recently in getting our temporary bleachers put in place. We are so thankful for that. We thank the board. We thank Dr. Langford. We thank those at the central office and the facilities office for making that happen. Because of that, we were able to have our first true home game a couple of weeks ago, and then homecoming on Friday night. Now, it was mass chaos, somewhat organized chaos, but it was chaos nevertheless to put that many people at our stands. But we were able to have a homecoming thanks to you guys. So again, this is part thanks as well for all of your work in making that happen. I have to say the collaboration that I saw take place with administrators, elected officials in our communities over that past month, it actually gives me hope that we can work together for a more permanent solution because of the way we all came together and reacted on a more temporary situation. This allows us to continue our quest toward a new standard that's already been set and established in recent athletic facilities that's been constructed, that's high quality, they're functional, and they're also something that we as a community and a county, in my opinion, can be very proud of. So again, appreciate what you guys have done in the past, board, to establish that new standard, and we would hope as we move forward, we would continue toward that new standard that's already been established. I understand that we have both urgent and less immediate needs at the moment, and some of those are replacing very unsafe and unfunctional bleachers that we've had to work with, which have now been condemned and collapsed, which you guys know. This juncture, it's less of a want and it's more of a need for us because we have no stadium. We've lost. We're going to lose our press box and also our restrooms as a result of that. So we have some pressing needs in our community that we need help with. Additionally, if we don't move this process forward quickly, we're going to be in one heck of a bind as we hit next fall because we financially, in our programs financially, depend upon gate receipts, concessions, and other things associated with that. So we're in dire need of help in the immediate future as we move forward. I know that there's other schools, and I know you guys have to balance all of this. There's other schools, Hendersonville, Portland, White House, Gallatin. There's others that all have needs as well, and I know that you have to balance all of those. So anyway, I appreciate Dr. Langford yesterday. Some of the other needs that have to be addressed were addressed in your email, and I know that's going to take a lot of work as we move forward as well. A lot of this, though, is a result of neglect over many years. That stadium was built 42 years ago by parents, and by the looks of it, they do absolutely nothing about construction.
Mr. Haygood, your time is up. If you want to take just maybe another minute or so to wrap up.
Okay, I didn't know how much time I had. So
I'm sorry, and I forgot to announce that you get 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. To me, though, this isn't a we do X or Y. This is an and. We have to continue to support the education of our students, fund those programs, fund infrastructure. I completely understand that. But this is an and. We have to do those things and bring our facilities, our athletic facilities up to par. Our athletic facilities, not just for Beach, but across the county, are the epicenter of what's happening on any given night. They're an important part of the education of our kids. And I look back at my high school career, as bad as it was, it is some of those life lessons that I've taken with me throughout my whole life, as much as I did, maybe more so than Latin. So anyway, I think it's really important that we fund these things that need immediate attention as soon as possible. We need to get started, but I also ask that you balance that with the long-term needs as well. So thank you for the time. Sorry I went over, but I think I took 2 minutes getting up here, Mr. Brewer, so I apologize for that.
We'll give you credit for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haygood. Next is Beth Deering. We'll give your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak on an agenda item.
Okay, thank you. My name is Beth Deering. I live at 701 Emily Drive in Goodlettsville, Tennessee. Sarah Andrews and Steve King have filled a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, and messages for me, and I appreciate their time. I will say I have 4 children in the Sumner County school system. We moved intentionally from Robertson County to Sumner County for the level of education that they receive here, and I'm very thankful for that. But another thing that we gained in that process was the Shackle Island community. We had no idea what the sports meant for our kids. All 4 of our children are student athletes, both male and female. So I'm not just talking about the football program as I speak tonight. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that. I am also talking about the female sports system in Sumner County schools. So the Shackle Island Stadium brings together hundreds of people every week. It's not just beach football. It's Knox Doss. It's their home field. It's the Junior Bucks. It's the Junior Mustangs. It's TW Hunter. So it is a place where people come together, not just football players, but the band and the cheerleaders, and everybody is unified on that field. So it's a place where community is built. And we have a responsibility as citizens of this community to the parents, the students, and the educators here to do what's right. So as Charlie said, I'm not asking for you to choose football stands or teacher salaries. I'm asking you to choose both. There's place for both. There's a need for both. And it takes having a great athletic program for the unification to come together so that the students can learn better in a classroom. I know that some of you may not agree with that, but I can assure you it makes a difference when you have players who are committed to education because they want to get their playing time in on the field. So, and I've heard it said that the board is really proud of the standard that was set with the most recent construction. I think that's excellent. We have a responsibility to continue that level of excellence as we move forward and get it right the first time, because I've also heard that comment used. So getting it right the first time means the second time at Beach we get it right, and then we do it right going forward. I will say the lack of permanent stands changes the atmosphere at Shackle Island Stadium. So if you've been to a game before and a game after, the atmosphere is different. Our student section cannot participate at the level that they normally do. They have to tone it down because the stands can't handle it. Our homecoming game on Friday, the opposing team took over our stadium. That's never happened before. And I was embarrassed that as a parent and as a board that we let that happen on our field, because that's not the kids' responsibility, that's ours. We've invested a lot of private money to improve our facilities. The Booster Club raised the money to turf the field, both baseball and soccer. We invested tens of thousands of dollars of privately raised money for the softball field that's at a city park, because we do not have a home field for the girls softball program at Beach High School either. And I will also add that when you're talking about money that's lost from participation, ticket sales, concession sales, that concession stand funds other athletic programs within Beach High School. Those other programs work in there to raise money so that they can have successful programs. And I'm talking about the girls softball team and the girls basketball team primarily. So it's eating into their budgets as well. So I'll just wrap this up by saying we're not asking you to pick teacher salaries or proper facilities. We're asking you to do what's right by each and every student within this county at every school. And we have an urgent need at Beach because we have no stands. on either side of the field. None. No bathrooms to use. And so I am asking you to please, with urgency, get our stadium back in place for next season so our boys and every other kid in our school can have a good season. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Deering. Next item on the agenda, matters involving council. We don't have any matters involving council tonight, so we're moving on to reports from the director, Dr. Langford.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. First, let me talk about update regarding capital purchases in football stadiums. I was on the initial construction crew of the home side at Beach. I was 7 or 8. My primary task is that I walked to Worshams. And if you can imagine this, 1981 was a different time. Usually I went to Worshams and got Cokes, bologna, and cigarettes. I don't think Bobby will sell cigarettes to a 9-year-old now, but in 1981 it was a little different. But and I think what y'all said captured well what's happened over the last 50 years in Sumner County, probably longer. And Gallatin Stadium's even older over here. Is that communities built our athletic facilities, and they did a tremendous job. They did the very best they could. I mean, I remember the Oak Ridge boys. Jamie Allen went to Beach. Dwayne Allen, the Oak Ridge boys did fanfare one year before there was a stadium to help pay for the home side bleachers. There have been thousands and thousands of hours around the county poured into building stadiums. And I think the truth is that, I think, just as we've said before, cement structures hit an end of life, and we're at the end of life at cement structures in Sumner County. And I think, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say that I think everybody on the board is generally in the same place, that we want the absolute safest facilities we can. And my goal through this process is that we can remove bleacher conversations from our conversation for the rest of our natural born lives, so we don't have to think about it again, because we know we've got the best. And I appreciate the point. I think we said this last month. We set the bar high, and rather than go down, let's lift everything up. And if you go to any of our school campuses, there's nothing better than watching kids run out on the field or the court or the band competition field or whatever else they're doing, to watch the heart that they have. There's something to be said for learning how to love something more deeply than yourself, and most of us get that through sports and extracurriculars. It's no different. My daughters played soccer. They were not great athletes. They moved into speech and theater. They could sing better than they could run, but they had just as much pride and love for theater and chorus and everything. So we want to. I had some emails after the last thing, and I think you summed it up well. It's not an either or, it's a both and, because we've got to do some things to address the needs of our fine arts programs and our sports facilities and everything else. And I think we can work together to do those things. I think what we're looking at is a short or a slow and fast process. There are certain things, we have things on the agenda tonight that we need to approve, because we've got to get those things rolling to get bleachers built before next football season. We're going to also move slowly on some things, because our goal is to have all of our bleachers restored at the stadiums that lost bleachers next year. Now, that may look a little different. There's some, like White House is a different solution because of the way the stadium's constructed. White House may be just a little bit longer. We got some big questions, and that's the slow part. Beach, it's pretty easy. We need bleachers next year. That's not a long-term question. So the question is how do we move fast and slow? And I have to say, one of the most encouraging things over the last couple months is on September, I think it was the 7th, it was after the last board meeting, study session, we got together a group, each high school except Liberty Creek, sent a team, principal, athletic director, football coach, track cross-country coach, and 3 to 5 parents, community supporters, all came together, and we probably had 40, 50 people in there. And I thought there were a couple really exciting things. First, everybody was all in on making everything better for all student athletes. It wasn't my sport, your sport, our sport. It was our sports, our county. There were conversations between tables to try to align the whole county. There was a real commitment to excellence for facilities across the county. even, the schools like Station Camp, for instance, whose bleachers are in good shape, they have a lot of needs too that need to be addressed. And so theirs are going to be different. It's not going to be a football stadium, but it's going to be some other things. And so we want to do our very best to address those. But I was very encouraged. And then I got to spend about 35 minutes. I was at Beach's homecoming Friday night, and I ran into Bobby Worsham, and we had a good 35 minute conversation where we relived the oral history of the Beach High School football stadium. And I wish we could have recorded it, because there's so many great turns and twists in how we got to where we are today. And it's really something for the Shackle Island community to be proud of. It's good to see football back at Shackle Island, and looking forward to a brighter future. Some of the goals that we talked about when we met on the 6th was, we're not just looking at replacing bleachers. We've got to look forward to what's coming next. In the next couple of years, we're going to have new sports. We're going to have lacrosse. We're going to have girls flag football. There will be others that we don't even know about yet over the course of the lifetime of these stadiums. We have, when we were one of the first counties, if you remember back, I think 2009, 2010, that added athletic trainers. At the time, athletic trainers gravitated towards the football program out of necessity, because that's where the most athletes were, that's where the most kids that got hurt were, and it's where they had space and money to fund the equipment and stuff that the trainers needed. Where we are now is the athletic trainer, if you talk to coaches, some of them would probably take another athletic trainer over an assistant coach. They're that vital to what we do. And it's not just the training that they give. They also are people of character that live with our athletes and take great care of them. I remember when we won the state in soccer in 2017, they interviewed all of our girls about what they want to do in life, and over 2/3 of them chose athletic training because of the relationship they had with our trainer. She was that good. So as we're looking at these facilities, one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we have state-of-the-art training facility spaces that are centrally located so all of our athletes and students can access them. That's going to be a big part of our push. Restrooms were mentioned, concession stands, all those things that go into it. We need to take the time and get this right. A lot of our facilities, because they were built over the course of 40, 50, 60 years, they were done by communities and paid for as they went, because that's the very best that we could do. Now we've got time to step back. The slow part is stepping back and getting it right so that we add things that are desperately needed. I think, one of the things that I really want to urge that we consider is that we put a track at every high school in Sumner County. If we have space to do it, I think we do it. Track and cross country are fast-growing sports. They're wonderful sports. There's huge enthusiasm for it in our community. It's the right thing to do. Currently, we have 2 regulation competition tracks. We have one at Hendersonville High School. We have one at Liberty Creek High School. We have a 6-lane track at Station Camp, but you can't run certain meets on that track, and there's been some water damage and things there that we need to address. I know, not to harp on White House, but my next to last year principal, we had a girl that won the state in the 400. When she trained, she had to go to Hendersonville or Springfield to train. We want to have the best facilities for our kids, close enough where they can access them and take advantage of them. So, safety, looking forward, being forward thinking, and getting the ball rolling to do as many things as we can, as quickly as we can, while also stepping back and being very strategic about our moves. We're probably, just in terms of our recommendation tonight, you'll see a little bit later on the agenda, is to move $15.5 million out of reserves to fund the first wave. That will not cover. I'm not going to lie. We had a beautiful day that day. Some of our stadium proposals, we could host a Super Bowl. We were close to a retractable roof. Dr. Woods made a strong case for a retractable roof in Portland. We're probably going to nix that, but you know what? We want to dream big because we want the very best for our communities. And so we're going to recommend that we move $15.5 million out of reserves to help fund the first wave of our stadium renovations, rebuilds, and facilities updates to move forward. In addition to that, we've got some other projects that we had already kind of prioritized that we're going to take out of GP Capital. Some of those are on the agenda tonight. There's a fencing bid that will allow us to purchase fencing all year. If you remember Ms. Brown, when she presented about safety last month, fencing is one of the things that we can purchase with safety money. We're also, as we rework some of these stadiums and things, we're going to have to tear down fencing and put up new fencing. It's great that we've got a strong bid on fencing. We'll be able to use that in multiple ways to benefit our school campuses. We've got Station Camp High School gym roof is on the consent agenda. So the gym roof at Station Camp desperately needs to be replaced. Talked to Andy Brown this morning. He checked with the contractor. If we approve it tonight, we're looking at about a 7-week lead for them to finish it. 3 weeks to get the materials together and 4 weeks to complete the task. They can work on it while kids are in school. It's not a problem because they're not having to take everything up. So the gym roof at Station Camp High School desperately needs to be replaced. We're also asking to replace the flooring at Station Camp High School. You know, it's hard to believe. A lot of people don't believe Station Camp High School is the age that it is. It's a little older than people think. And one of the things that's happened over the years is the leveler that was put under the floor tiles has started to disintegrate. So every time you wax it or do anything to it, it pops a floor tile. And it's hard to go back in because the other tiles are in the same state. So it's disintegrating underneath there. The best thing we can do is just go in and replace all the tile. That's going to be, they could do it whenever we asked, but in terms of not disrupting school, we're going to have to phase that in. Mr. Brown is checking to see if we can do either the upper floor or the lower level over Christmas break when they've got a good 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks in there to work, and then do the other in the summer after school's out. What we don't want to do is get halfway done and have kids coming back in after fall break, Thanksgiving break, or spring break. That's a pretty sizable job, and so we want to make sure that we get that one done. You know, because in addition to putting the floor back, I don't know if you may not know this, and I'll say this facetiously, lots of kids walk on a school floor. So once we get the tile down, we need to put several coats of wax over it or it'll mark up, and if you don't do it initially, you regret it because it's harder to get those stains and marks off. So we want to do it right and then have it last another 30, 40 years before, 50 years before we have to look at it again. Some of the other things that are on the agenda for tonight is a boundary and topographical study at BHS. That has to be done before we can look at putting bleachers back in. So we can go ahead and start that process and get that done and have that ready to roll. Other thing is the demolition of, we've got a bid to do the demo at Portland High School, the 3 middle sections, Hendersonville High School, the visitor section, and Beach High School, the home section. We've already demoed the visitor side. So we want to get that lined up so after the, like 12 hours after the last play, we can start knocking down bleachers and get rolling for the next stage of development. So if we can get ahead, those are things that we can move quickly on and get ahead so that we can be in a great, we're going to be tight the lead time. We have talked to, the company that generally provides steel for bleachers, and if we move quickly, we'll be able to get on currently in a lot of places, there's a 6-month delay from request time to when you actually get steel. They're willing, they want to work with us to get bleachers back in Sumner County. And so we're hopeful if we can when we get to that point of the process that we'll be able to find a vendor that will bid and jump in there that'll be able to meet our needs to get football stadiums built. Westmoreland Middle School chilling tower. I said this somewhere at the end, somebody raised their hand and said, what's a chilling tower? Which is fair because until a couple months ago I didn't know what a chilling tower was either. But a chilling tower is a central component of the air conditioning unit at Westmoreland Middle School. It's about my age. There's a lot of wisdom that comes with being 51, but being a cooling element is not good. So we need to, best thing we can do is just replace that chilling tower, and that'll really help things at Westmoreland Middle School. It's time to do it. That thing would last forever. You can go manufacture parts and get it to run, but it's not terribly efficient, and it's causing other problems because it throws off a lot of water and it causes other issues and problems. So it's just time to replace it. Andy and his team have done a great job of maintaining, but it's time to spend a little money and fix that at Westmoreland Middle School. All those things are on your consent agenda for tonight. Some other things that are coming up in the future. Hopefully next month we'll have the Portland High School roof. Portland High School, we need to replace the entire roof, and it's going to be pricey. It's probably going to be somewhere around 1.5, 1.6 million. But we've reached the stage where it's critical for us to replace the roof at Portland High School. You'll have some more HVAC units and components. Just as a reminder, most of our schools don't have like one massive HVAC unit that runs everything. They have some central air, and then they have a whole bunch of little units, and those are a lot of times what's going out. We're going to have to do over the next year or two, we're going to have to start replacing those units, but also one of the issues we have is we've lost about 120 years of collective experience in our HVAC team with retirements. And so one of the ways that we're going to have to address that, there aren't enough HVAC technicians. If you were going to pay whatever price, HVAC techs now are going downtown and making $125,000 a year doing HVAC work on commercial projects. It's not a problem that we're just going to be able to fix by hiring. Part of what we're going to have to do is spend the money to automate a lot of our systems so that it's easier to manage, and they're on the same. Like right now, our guys are managing 6, 7, 8 different systems, and that requires. It's good when you got 40 years experience or 35 years experience. You can do it in your sleep. If you have somebody new that's learning, it's much more difficult, and it slows our response time. So we're looking at that as well, and then we're hoping also to give you a capital report and kind of a basically after the meeting that we had in September, we gave each school prepared a sheet with all their requests for facilities. The architect is looking through those now and putting that in, getting some mock-ups and getting some things for us to come back with that team and look at and see what tweaks and changes they want to make, and then we'll bring that to the board. Again, some things we'll just have to go ahead and bring because it's time sensitive and urgent, but we're going to try to fit that within an overall master plan that gets us to where we're going. Because honestly, like just monetarily, to be good stewards with what we're talking about to do facilities wise, but also compensation and some of the other big ticket items, some of these things are not going to be an immediate thing. If we're talking about building a brand new stadium on a campus, like take White House for instance, or Portland or Gallatin or wherever else, there's a lot of conversations to be had. No decisions have been made on any of that, but you're talking about a brand new stadium is probably a 2-year project, whereas like at Beach, we already have in Hendersonville, we have a field, we have a scoreboard, we've got infrastructure. We're mainly like first wave, not the only wave, but the first wave we can work on getting the bleachers back in and get that knocked out. And then we've also, we are in the midst, Ms. Skinner, do you know how many strategic planning meetings we've done? A lot. We meet in September, we're in the 30s, so in the month of September, we spend about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and we meet with the principal and leadership team of each school, and they share everything. We look at the data, we talk about their staffing, we talk about capital projects and things like that. And so what we're doing now is I'm compiling a master list of all those asks, because as we've gone through it, what we've seen are some of the things that are projects that are on Ms. Brown's radar for safety. We can move those into that pot to make sure we can go ahead and address those. Some of them are things that we already have. Some of the things that we've already kind of earmarked money for is a track at Gallatin High School and Station Camp High School. We can go ahead and get started on some of those this year. And so some of those things are coming up. Station Camp High School track, we may be a year off on that just because there's some irrigation and drainage work that we need to do first. We don't want to go in and put a brand new track and then have it get flooded and we damage it. So we want to make sure we fix some of those issues first. So that's the kind of stuff that I want to be able to bring to y'all so you can see a master plan in addition to some of the short-term moves that we have to make. One other thing that I missed that's on tonight's agenda, and we'll have a little bit later to talk about, but I'll just go ahead and inform you what it is on our capital projects list, is Polaris Rangers. Polaris Rangers are the vehicles, sometimes they're called Gators, they're called different things, but basically what our schools have expressed a need for is the ability for our athletic trainers to move between fields. A lot of times now they're doing it in their personal vehicle, which is fine unless you have like in the fall, if you have maybe a JV football game, a volleyball game, a soccer game, band practice. You have enough cars on campus that it's hard to maneuver, they get blocked in, or like one game dismisses and you can't get to another field. We've had things where like a volleyball player separates a shoulder, the trainer was responding to a call at the soccer field, and it takes them 20 minutes to get back because of traffic. The Polaris, the Rangers give us the ability to move, not requiring road traffic. It also gives us the ability for the trainer to put all of his or her equipment on it instead of loading it in and out of their car. And also if they need to transport a student, not for something that requires an ambulance, obviously, but if it's a sprained ankle or something like that, we're able to move them out to their car to help assist for something that's non-emergency. So we're putting on the agenda. I suspect that we'll ask for more of these in the next months. We have schools that have them, but they're older, and we need to really dig in and look at those and see if we just need to go ahead and replace those. We have 4 schools that currently, 3 schools that don't have one. White House, Westmoreland, and Portland do not have one and have requested one. Beach High School, when the visitor side collapsed, it crushed one of their tractors, and they've asked for one to help them in the interim to maneuver things, and it's a great use. They're in a little, they have that need for that ranger, and I think it makes sense for us to go ahead and prioritize that. Now, I'll tell you up front, the lead time right now on a Polaris Ranger is 271 days. So that's why we went ahead and put it forward tonight, because the clock's not going to get any faster. We can try to look and see if we can find something that Chris Harrison's looked to see if we can find something that we could get faster. But we also need to get something that will handle the wear and tear. These are used, if you talk to any of our coaches or athletic trainers, the ones that have them, they're used every day. And they're hauling equipment, they're hauling coolers, they're hauling, it's like watching if you watch a high school football practice when it's hot, it's like watching a small army move. You have to move, the old days of salt tablets, ammonia tabs and things like that are long gone. Like, they're state of the art in terms of taking care of our kids and hydrating them and everything else. It requires the movement of a lot of equipment, and this is the right piece of equipment to do that. So that's kind of an update on our stadiums and capital. If y'all have any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer those.
Mr. King.
Yeah, I want to ask a question about this topographical study at Beach.
Yeah.
So we've talked about maybe adding a track there. Is that I guess that topographical study will explore that option, and would it require moving the field, or the current field as it is, would a track be able to be installed there? Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, so I'm going to, Coach Crabtree, raise your hand and wave at me if I mess this up, okay? What we have talked about, because of the layout of Beach's stadium, is to look at putting the track possibly around the practice field, because it cuts down on the traffic. You want a moderate amount of traffic on a track because it's a very specialized substance and it can deteriorate. So, it's always, when you put it around a football stadium, you have to drive stuff over it to get out on the field. It's a little easier. It makes sense. The other thing it allows you to do that I think is a net win for our track and field athletes is you're not going to be able to run field sports. I feel like I can speak confidently for the Beach community. We're not going to throw shot put and discus on the field turf. That's not going to happen. You could, I guess, theoretically, but we're in a little different situation with field turf at Beach High School. It makes sense to put it in a different location, and then you can run your field events on the interior, and it gives you more campus space, and it gives you more space for bleachers. Obviously, Beach has large, she mentioned it earlier, Beach has large crowds at football games, so we're going to have to put in, as we're estimating the number of seats that we need to put in, we try to look at what crowds currently are and anticipate growth in the future. So it'll give us the adequate space at Beach to make sure that we've got enough room to have a nice track. Beach has been a powerhouse track and field school for decades. Mm-hmm. And should have had a track a long time ago, but we're going to correct that now. But getting it, that's part of the reason of getting the master plan together, because I think there's really a better location at Beach that then gives us all that space for bleachers, for other facilities that we'll need.
Okay, so that's good, because that won't hinder bleach installation, right. Or
Right.
But so that thank you, appreciate that.
Mr. King. Now, Mr. Lancaster's light came on, then Miss Andrews, and Miss Lancaster's went off. So
That's how my mind works. Sometimes I think about something and I forget about it, and then I think about it again. But
we'll go with Miss Andrews.
Thank you. So, yes, speaking about track, I know that there's been discussions about moving it up to the practice field, which, I think could possibly be a great solution for that. I did look at the image that's attached and so forth, and looking and trying to figure out, the layout as far as those tracks. They have to be fairly large because you're talking about distance and so forth, and they have to be to a certain regulation. They have to be, definitely would prefer 8 lanes over 6, and so just looking to see that. So I appreciate that we are, getting the survey done to see if that is going to be feasible for us to do that. Obviously, with that, then, we also have to then look at accessibility for those who then go to spectate that sport as well. So I'm just hoping that those conversations are also happening, that, you know, when we're looking, if we're gonna put that, you know, right now to access a practice field, I have one that plays baseball. Obviously, if you've driven through between those two fields, that's something that I've had conversations with. Andy Brown and his team have come in and tried to help us, you know, with some of that paving issues and where it, you know, got some water retention issues and so forth. So that to be able to then access that will also be, you know, things that we have to consider. Seating for those events, I think that's one thing that if you do talk to somebody at Liberty Creek, they will tell you there is not adequate seating for track and field. For events, I don't know that most people realize how many people actually attend a track and field event.
Right.
But those bleachers and so forth fill up. So I think it's, you know, when we're talking about that, it's not just a track, it's not just, you know, the field events, it's all of those things that go into it. And then looking, you know, at also, okay, well, if you're going to access it up on the practice field, then what does that look like for baseball that's right there? What's that look like for soccer and so forth? So,
Yeah.
are we looking, when we're getting that survey back and we're going to get that information, are those some of the questions that are also being asked to make sure that those things are going to be adequate?
Yeah, so we're very early in master planning on that. I agree, like, to me, accessibility is huge. Like, I think every year how powerful it is to see Special Olympics at Station Camp High School. It would be wonderful to be able to have multiple locations where we could do those types of events. We do it at Station Camp because it's more accessible. And so accessibility is a huge thing for me as well. And the beauty of building new bleachers and things like that is it gives us the opportunity to be able to do that. And so, yes, it's early in terms of, like, do we have a plan for all that yet? No, it's still with the architects. But I think the advantage of master planning is it allows us to step back and say how accessible are our facilities and plan for that with sidewalks and, you know, walkways, whatever else we need.
Parking and so forth. Just that when we're looking and going, hey, yeah, we can put
Yeah.
a track and field, you know, we can put a track up there, but then to not have.
Well,
and I think that's where we've dropped the ball in previous stadium builds and so forth. Is where, as we've looked at it and we've said, okay, we're building football. Okay, oh, now we need a baseball field, and so now we built it, which my husband
Yeah.
helped build a baseball field, and because that's how we did things then. You know, okay,
Yeah.
now we're going to do. And it's been piecemeal together where if we've said if we're going to do it right, let's do it right. So if we're looking at the topography and we're looking at how things are going to lay out, let's make sure that we're discussing the full extent of what our expectations are through there. Because
Right.
I don't want us to say, oh yeah, we can put the track up there, and then we start looking at that and we're like, okay, but wait, now hold on, wait, we forgot to ask
Well,
about parking and accessibility and
yeah,
then
I
how
would-
that affects
I
everything.
would
That's how
just-
the dominoes fall.
I would just point back to the whole idea that we started with, which is we're setting the bar high for every school and every campus, and so we want it to be excellent. And I think, you know, for instance, like one of the easiest fixes at Beach would be to pave that access road. I know they've been asking for that for 10 years or so probably. So getting that access road would give us more accessibility to those other fields and things like that. And I think there's absolutely some things. Yeah, I think that's how on my list of our list of priorities as well should be.
Ms. Andrews, Mr. Lancaster.
Kind of on the same line as that, since we are looking, you know, some things further down the road, but when we do this, you know, we're only getting more and more sports, and we can't do everything on the football field. Are we looking at multi-purpose, some type of field there for, you know, right now, like somebody said, they've got the junior Bucks, the junior Mustangs, the, you know, middle schools, and middle school soccer for Hunter and Dawson that play at Drakes Creek. So just to have something where, you know, more things can be there on campus. If there's any way we can look at having some sort of multi-purpose, you know, because we're bringing in lacrosse. It's
Yeah.
going to be TWSAA sanctioned, and girls flag football is in the next 2 to 3 years as well. So you've got just even more events or sports offerings that are just.
Yeah, I think there's serious questions about field turf. I think what we've seen is Beach's field as much use as it gets without field turf the grass would be dead by now. It'd be a dust bowl or a mud bath, depending on it is. And I think that, multi-use facilities, and the thing is that, when I think back, I'll be honest, like I hate cutting grass. Like I was administrative football coach, like I sent fundraising letters and stuff like that because I hated cutting the practice field and lining the practice field. But there's a generation of coaches that have done that religiously, and their football fields look like Augusta. It's harder to find that because younger coaches didn't grow up on farms, and they didn't grow up fixing tractors, and they didn't, and they also don't want to spend. I mean, if you coach a sport, like if you coach football, softball, baseball, anything with grass that you've got to cut, you take the time of coaching and you add another 20 hours to it because you're going to spend 15, 20 hours a week lining fields, cutting grass, maintaining it. And that's a huge commitment for a coach and their family. So I think that multi-use, it's a little bit more investment on the front end, but I definitely think it's something we're going to have to look at because when you add lacrosse, a couple other sports too. Soccer, I think, is a tough question, but just because field turf plays so fast, it's a little bit different. I don't know. I mean, some schools love soccer on field turf, other schools hate it. But yeah, I think absolutely, Mr. Lancaster, I think we need to look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Mr. Graham?
Did you say Mr. Graham? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Langford, were we able to file any type of insurance claims on the collapsed bleachers? And if we heard back on that, do we know if we're receiving any funds for that?
Yeah, it's in the process. Like these don't happen overnight, but we should get a claim on the collapsed the visitors bleachers at Beach High School. The stuff that was destroyed underneath it, there was a tractor, a zero-turn mower, some other equipment, a shed, some other stuff that we will get settlement for that. We will also get some money back for the rental bleachers on the visitor side. They do not cover like the ones like the home side. They don't cover that because they didn't fall, but they will cover the visitor side. So we will get some insurance money on that. But that might be, the storm damage that we had in Station Camp in the spring. I think it took 4 or 5 months. What's that? Yeah, in Portland, like that. It takes a while with the insurance to get it turned around, but we should see some money come back.
And then on the HVAC front, were you or Mr. Brown able to determine cost on portable units for classrooms that have that immediate need?
Yeah, they have some portable units. Sometimes they work really well, depending on the size and the space. Sometimes HVAC is a different world, so I'll have to probably have Mr. Brown come speak about some of this in greater detail. Sometimes it catches the hot air and blows it around with a portable unit, so it's kind of, sometimes they work, some schools they work really well, but we have some, and we can absolutely look at getting some more.
Yeah, I think, especially if we have a big wait time for our maintenance team with so much need. And then when we talk about the strategic plan, I like what the speaker said, that it's not an X or a Y, it's an and. And I completely agree with that, which is why I think maybe going forward, I'd like to see a list of all of our needs and prioritize based on everything we need, from staffing to facilities to football stadiums. And then with that, know how much money we have to go with, because I guess I didn't understand in our last meeting, it got rounded down to $11 million, and now we're going to be asked to move $15.5 million today.
Yeah.
But I think there's 37 that we voted for as a board to better education. There's the 56. That's our 2 months of reserve, but that's not really county required, so maybe we can dip into that. So I'd really like, kind of going forward, to prevent any type of budgetary crisis, I would like to, as a whole, as a board, to be presented with everything we need and what we have to do it with.
Yeah. And
then we as a board can plan better too.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're working on now. Like, obviously, we'll have a stadium report, hopefully in a couple weeks. And then, we're working right now with principals to see their current needs, and we'll be able to, as I mentioned, divvy some of that up with safety. We've got some of it is ISM, the grant that we got with the governor's money, some of that will be addressed with that. And then just pulling our different pots of money. I'm glad you mentioned the 15.5. I meant to explain that earlier. So if you remember Ms. Brown's presentation last 2 weeks ago, you hear the $100 million, $120 million reserve. When you pull out stuff like retirement, things that are committed, everything else, it brings us down to about $67 million. The comptroller's recommendation, and it doesn't apply to us, it applies to Sumner County government, but it's a good policy is to have, Dave Ramsey says you need 3 months of reserve. The comptroller recommends for a government organization 2 months of operational expenses in reserve. 2 months of operational expenses for Sumner County is around $56 million, a little bit over $56 million. That's about $1.8 million a day to run Sumner County schools. So we try to keep about $56 million in reserve. We have $67 million. We think, I don't think we'll be able to spend, if we pull $15.5 million out of reserve, I don't really think we'll be able to spend $15.5 million on stadium projects, because I believe that some of those will stretch out over more than 1 year. But we would like to have that money available in case we can. We feel confident with talking to Mr. Lawing where our revenue projections are coming in. We're going to come in higher. When you look at sales tax, you look at property tax collections, you look at all of our revenue streams, we'll probably come in where we'll still be right around that $56 million mark over the course of the year. So I think we can go ahead, given the needs that our schools have in terms of stadium facilities, we can pull that $15.5 million out of reserve and focus that there, and then to get the first wave of that done, and then work within, I think, Ms. Brown, we've been working on a pot of about $6.5–7 million of immediate capital needs, like we can pay for the station camp roof, gym roof, we can pay for things like that out of that. We can try, when we get that list, because I agree, Mr. Graham, it'd be nice to have a full list we can look at, because then we can start knocking out different things. For instance, some of the things that principals request, Mr. Brown will switch a chunk of his maintenance workers off of mowing soon, and they'll start hitting projects like painting and stuff, different things like that. And so it gives us some opportunity to knock some of those projects out that aren't truly, they're kind of capital projects, but they're not ones that we have to bid and spend significant money on. So yeah, I agree, that's a great idea, and I think we can certainly work towards that. Compensation will come in January. Mr. Ott had a meeting today, he's working on that. That's getting everybody together, because I can tell you once we start doing the work that we need to do on compensation, it's all encompassing, and there are a whole lot of moving parts. For instance, we haven't updated coaching supplements, I think, in 35 years probably. We've added some things, looking at addressing coaching supplements, supporting fine arts, then looking at classified teacher or classified pay, certified pay, and everything. We want to really move everything at roughly the same, while also addressing needs that are very specific and hard to fill. So I would say that would be kind of my timeline. I don't think we can get a comprehensive compensation plan together until probably January, because it's 4,500 employees. We want to make sure that we do it right, and we've got some things that we need to address that are carryovers from previous generations. I mean, you may not know this unless you've been around education for a long time, but for decades, you only received, if you were a teacher, you got 10 checks. You didn't get a check in the summer. And if you wanted 12 checks, you had to create an account with the credit union, and then they would space your money out for you, so you got 12 checks. Like I had a friend that one time said it took us 35 years to figure out you can divide by 12 just as easily as 10. That's been a huge benefit for our employees. I think we've got some questions to ask about the way we pay, frequency, everything like that. And those are a lot of the things that are being considered. But that's a big thing to pull together, and we want to do it. We want to do that correctly. So, so I would hope by January we have that, Mr. Graham. But I think some of the capital things we can have October, November at the latest.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Mr. Lacy?
Like I said, I support, on Beach, getting all of our schools that's had problems with their bleachers. We need to get on bleachers that work and function. I fully support that. But what about our other schools? I would like to see a timeline of when we can get them the things that they need to update their facility. When do you anticipate that we can get them some funds to do whatever they need to do?
So that's kind of like what I've been doing, meeting with principals what we've been collecting is each school, they've had the opportunity to ask for capital items. And, 95% of them are things that we need to address as quickly as we can. And we're going to, but I think some of them might be a 2-year solution. Some are, let's get a crew out right now and get it done. So we'll be able to prioritize some of those and divide that up between what's a capital need and then what's a maintenance request that we just need to get taken care of and addressed. So I'm hopeful we can have that, depending on how the stadium work goes. I would say October, November. I hope to be able to share with y'all that master list of what we have.
So I would love to have that. Also, do you anticipate having to go to the county commission to ask them to help pay for some of these?
I think what the decision that the board will have to make is how fast do we want to move. I feel confident that our stadium projects and everything and all of our capital needs will be higher than $15.5 million. I think the question in terms of going to ask the county for assistance is to look at how fast do we want to do it, because we'll be able to, through the budgeting process, to set certain money aside each year for these projects. We'll be able to look at our reserves each year and, kind of like we did this year, and figure out what we can do. But I think we have to have that comprehensive list and look at it and then make a recommendation. If we want to do it in a year and a half, we'll have to have some outside help, outside the school system. If we're willing to do it over 2 or 3 years, we should be able to cover most of that ourselves. So I think, I think in Sumner County, Dr. Haygood mentioned this earlier, we've always come together and worked to get things done, and I think that'll be the same way now. But I understand that the county has to be fiscally responsible and look at their budgets and what they can do too. And I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I'd be happy. At a minimum, I want to go over and share with the commission what we're planning to do, because it affects the entire county. And and I think there's a lot of exciting things to jump on board with, and we've always been able to do that as a county. And I want to say this, you hate when you sit in my position, because it makes it sound like you're being critical of previous directors or previous generations. If you were here from the 70s through the 90s, there was a reason that our stadiums were built the way they were. It's that there was when I started teaching in 2009, we were selling magazines to have copy paper and copy machines. If you wanted something on the football field, you raised money for it. If you wanted something for the basketball field, you raised money for it. We've changed over the last year. We've changed those expectations, but I don't want to make it sound like I'm being critical of Mr. Hyde or Mr. Bills or anybody else before. They did the best they could. It's just it's different times in a very different county. So, as I said from the start, I want to work together with anybody. And if there's a place that our commission wants to jump on and help, we'll by all means welcome it. But I don't want to, I don't want to be guilty of trying to strong arm them into something. I want to, to be a collaborative work. So I would say it's a little too soon to say that, but we'll put the plan together. And I'll be happy to go share it with the county commission and see, if there's some areas we can work together, or if it's something that we just need to plan and say, we're going to do this now immediately. We're going to get bleachers back in, and then we're going to add tracks, and then we're going to do this, and we'll just work on down the list. What I found is, somebody said at one of their strategic planning meetings, the best way to eat an elephant's bite at a time. So we'll work as fast as we can, but as comprehensively as we can, so we do it right.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Ms. Hawkins?
I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm not sure how reasonable it would be, but have we ever considered looking to our corporations that are in Sumner County, and who some, I understand, have pretty nice tax deals for being here, one of the attractions for being here. Have we considered seeing if they would be interested in sponsoring some of our construction and improvements? And I think about Nissan Stadium, get their name on it somehow, to somehow help alleviate some of the cost. And actually, that would be an opportunity for them to have advertising or to be credited in some way and participate to the benefit of our county.
I think where we'll have to be careful, and as we've historically left that with the school. So, for instance, most of the schools have already sold advertising for different purposes on campus. We'd have to be careful. I think it's well worth exploring. We'll just have to be careful, because what I don't want to do is us sign a deal with someone when there's already a deal in place at the school for like, for instance, Beach has added a phenomenal scoreboard. Well, they had to sell advertising to do that. We'll have to be careful not to step on that. But I think it's definitely worth something, worth looking at something. And because we do have a lot of great businesses and corporate partners in Sumner County that want to partner with us and come alongside and support.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. King?
Yeah, just a question on, so the, is it the comptroller that recommends the 2-month? Or is that just a best practices, sort of a county-wide best practice?
So it's a little bit of both. It's the comptroller recommends it for school systems. The county Sumner County government has a policy that they try to follow where they keep 2 months of operating expenses, or 16.67%. So it's not our school board policy, but it's a county policy. And the reason that the county has maintained that is, if you look, we have the second highest bond rating, so that when it comes time to do a bond, that's why we got those interest rates when we built Liberty Creek and White House Intermediate. We got interest rates that were below 2% or right at 2% because we had that bond rating. So, it's also just, you don't want to get in a bind where, sometimes you'll have, like, I can't remember, it was one of the COVID years, the legislature approved our budget and then COVID hit and bit, and they came back in and they cut us about $1.8 million in revenue that came to us from the states. You got to always be prepared to take some hits like that, right, especially at a time where we're switching from the old funding formula to TISA. The state is rolling and is rolling a brand new platform. TISA is all about coding individual students. And we're rolling a brand new platform. Ms. Dam and her team and several others have worked hard on that. But it's all about coding. So we're going to be better in year 3 at coding all of our students than we're going to be this year, because the state's learning, we're learning. You've got to maintain healthy reserves to make sure that you're safe, so that you don't, the worst case scenario is you can't make payroll, you can't meet an emergency need or something like that. So, yeah.
So I was looking over the budget for this year. We've got capital outlay. Looks like there's about $5.5 million for construction and improvements. So that's 5.5 plus the 15. That's about $20 million that we can work with tonight, or looking at some of these things that are on the agenda. And it's early on in the school year. I don't think we've spent much of that 5.5 million.
We've got a lot of it committed, because, for instance, like the roof at Portland will be about $1.6 million. So it's not committed yet.
Okay.
But I would say probably the majority of that. We've got enough HVAC, roofs, different things like that. We'll dip into that.
Okay.
I think one of the things that I want us to discuss, it came to me after actually the last board meeting. I had a band parent email me and mention the high cost of band instruments.
Sure.
We have kids whose opportunity to join band is limited. I just wonder, with all the focus on stadium, a band instrument is a capital purchase. So I wonder if we want to allocate some money to schools to purchase. The thing is, band instruments are astronomically expensive too.
A bassoon can be about 10 grand.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So I would say a lot of that is probably already committed.
Okay. And I'm beating this drum again. We've, in 2 years' time, we had $55 million in unspent money that just was unspent at the end of the year. Revenues minus expenditures, 2 years worth. That was about $55 million. I just think there's if we're finishing every year with, 20 to 30 million of unspent money, that means there is money in our current budget that is somehow not being spent that we don't know about, and I still want to find out where that money is not being spent. For example, fiscal year 22, where was that money not spent? What lines were not spending that? That was 31 million that just got put in reserves. I keep bringing this up. So I would like to explore that, and find out, because again, and we're talking about staffing issues and things like that. Maybe, these are one-time expenses for capital projects, stadium, bleachers, things like that, tracks.
Yes.
But we definitely, if there's some room in there if we've got some recurring if we have money that can cover some recurring expenses, and I would like to explore that if possible.
Yeah, and I think not to rehash Ms. Brown's presentation, I would encourage everybody to watch it. I think it's, you know, we have a $338 million budget, so that flow is going to be probably year in, year out. Sometimes it's going to be higher. I think the last few years, some of the things that have led to some of those larger reserves moving in, which gives us actually the ability to do what we're doing right now, is the fact, like, one year, the first year of COVID, 2020, we had no idea how big the impact of COVID was, and we were trying to think of things like, how do we pay all of our employees for extended periods of time? Because we didn't know we were only going to be closed in 9 weeks. So when we, Mr. Lawing, the county, when we met, we projected flat revenue growth, not expecting, we were expecting, if you remember, when we did our budget in 2020, we were expecting economic Armageddon. We didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah. It turns out we did really well in Sumner County in 2020, that next budget year, because we captured internet sales tax for the first time. People stayed at home. They didn't go to Nashville that was closed down. They spent money here locally, and so we went flat with revenue and what we budgeted, but then we grew, like, I think something like Mr. Long, we have to tell us the exact number, but I think it was like 5, 6, 7%. So we caught a huge growth in our fund balance that year. And since then, for instance, Title I program just reallocated $1 million, and most of it was personnel because we had positions we couldn't fill last year. So some of that is in there, but I don't, it's going to be one of those things that it's going to go quickly when we start to do our compensation plan.
Sure, and I mean, and before, we're talking about local revenues. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm just sure it's on my mind. That was before that 31 million in excess unspent money went into the reserves prior to our maintenance of effort being increased. So we increased our local revenues by 14 million. So I'm just saying, where are we going to end up at the end of fiscal year? Well, fiscal year 23, I'm curious to find out. I know the comptroller hasn't reported that yet, but I would just, again, I think there's money that we're not really.
Yeah, Ms. Brown gave you that report 2 weeks ago. She gave you the comptroller's report for 2023. It's not finalized yet.
Okay,
but that's the.
It's not audited, but it's our final balance sheet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Usually our audit adjustments are minimal.
And I would say it's not necessarily all.
Well, do we know what our revenues minus expenditures amount? Did we know that? I don't remember. I'm sorry, I don't remember that part of the presentation. For 23, yeah.
Yes.
It's, if you look in the slide deck that she had last month, it's towards the end. It's got the current budget year. The first thing, the examples she walked us through was last year's, which the comptroller had published, and then she walked through.
And our financials are published. Our financials are published on our on board docs, and so you can go right now and look at our final year-to-date expenditure reports. That shows you our total revenue and our total expenditures for the year.
Since I don't have that in front of me,
I cannot quote that off the top of my head. That is, I look at thousands of numbers a day. I can't quote it, but we can pull it up. And like we talked about last week, if you have specific questions about certain things, we can sit down line by line and go through that with you. If you would like to make a meeting with myself and Dr. Langford, that is something that we do not mind going through and explaining what's in each line, what that variance looks like, why that variance may have been there, different reasons, because every single line is going to have a different reason in a different situation.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Langford, did you mention the last meeting that some or all of our cities may be willing to contribute some to this?
They've contributed to the conversation. Well, I'll tell you, every mayor is thrilled to be a part of the conversation. We're just so early. Like I've talked to Mayor Callis today. I've talked to Mayor Clary. I've talked to Mayor Brown. I've talked to all of Dr. Haygood. I've talked to him once or twice, the unofficial mayor of Shackle Island, I think. Everybody's thrilled, but they've got to look at their budgets too. So I think that'll be easier once we get an idea of what we're going to do to talk to them about what roles cities play. But right now, I mean, to me, it's been exciting. I forgot to mention that earlier in our group that when we met, we had our Sumner County Chambers of Commerce, Mayor Isbell came, Mayor Callis came, Mayor Brown was out of town. She sent some representatives. Mayor Clary was out of town, and he sent some representatives. So we had great representation around the county.
Mr. Rigger, Mr. Lacy?
Is there a way y'all could send us the PowerPoint for the budget presentation we had at the last meeting?
It's on board docs.
Is it? Could you email it to me?
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Mr. Lacy? All right. Mr. Langford, or Dr. Langford, you still have the floor.
All right. Well, thank y'all for your great feedback. Thanks for our community for coming out and sharing feedback. I'm really, I can't express enough. I'm excited for us to be able to begin working towards the next 50 years of Sumner County facilities and to see the great things we can do for our kids. And I appreciate the emphasis on all kids, because we do know extracurriculars and sports play a huge role in the development of our kids. Graduation rate, depression, mental health, all that. I think one of the top ways to address those needs is getting kids involved in things at their school. You know, when they find community and they find positive adult role models to be engaged with, amazing things happen for our kids. It's not total protection, it's not total safety, but it goes a long way towards enriching the lives of our kids. And I can't say it enough how proud I am of the coaches, band directors, chorus leaders, theater teachers, all those that lead all those extracurriculars, and the impact and work that they do for our kids. Next, we're going to go to a district testing data presentation, and Ms. Skinner's going to do that. Let me give a little bit of an introduction. Everything in here that's good, you should give credit to Ms. Skinner and her team. Everything that's not, it's my responsibility, because I was chief academic officer last year, and I'll accept that. But I want to say, I'll say some other things at the end, but I'm thankful for the team that we have, and it's been evident as we've worked through strategic planning. You know, there's some good parts of this data, and there's some ugly parts that we've got some plans to address. I'm gonna let Ms. Skinner talk through that, and then I'll turn off my mic.
I'll apologize. I get about 6 sentences in. I might have a coughing attack, so I did just pop a cough drop in my mouth, so hopefully that doesn't happen. The one pager you have in front of you is representative of the district as a whole, grades 3 through 12 in achievement. And so just wanted to highlight that we're above the state in all subjects. So 9.1% above the state in ELA, 15.8% above in math, 12% above in science, and 13.5% in social studies. The next 13 slides will break that data down a little bit more. The first slide is that little box on y'all's screen too, or is it just mine? You don't have the box. Okay, good, so you can see it. So you can see that first, the blue is the state, the orange is Sumner County. And if you look along the bottom, it'll show all ELA, then 3 through 8 ELA, and then our EOCs in ELA, which is high school. And then you'll see that the same thing for math, science, biology, social studies going across. So you can see that the district outperformed the state in all of those subjects, all grade levels. So we're proud of that. Questions on how to read the graph? Good. All right. So the next 13 slides are 3-year achievement data. So that first set of numbers that you see is 2023. The second set of numbers you see is 2022, and the third set you see is 2021. The colors, the first box is students that scored below proficient. The pink is approaching. Purple is met expectations, and then the blue is met expectations and exceeded in together. So what you want to happen is those numbers improve over time. So if we look at 2022 in ELA, compared to 2023, you can see our percent exceeded in mastery dip just a little bit. So in 2022, 47.4, and then you're looking at 2023, and that dipped just a tiny bit to 47.2. But there's some good numbers in there too. So that below proficient. It's higher in 2022 and lower in 2023. So we did grow some kids. We just didn't grow that met approaching and meeting expectations. So the next 12 slides are going to show this same graph over and over in different subject areas. So this one's ELA. So looking at math, same thing in 2022, we were at 56.2 for met and exceeded. Hop over to 2023, and we're 56.6. So grow a little bit, but not a ton. But the other numbers are mimicking what we want. We're getting a lower number. Can you not hear me? You have a question? Okay.
Is this across all grades or is it specific?
This is across all grades. Okay. For a snapshot at a board presentation, we wanted to talk about all of our students. If you want more in-depth information about grade levels, we can.
Specific elementary or so forth.
Right.
So
Yeah. These next slides are everybody all together. You're welcome.
Yes. So when we look at these graphs and the percent approaching and met, is that a true apples to apples comparison? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, for example, if a student scores a 60%, and that's met expectations, but the next year that same 60%, doesn't the state move the?
So they look at your district averages on how you perform and then compare that number to last year's number. So they take all of this data to come up with that 56.6. So this isn't, you can get into individual student data, and we can do that and dig right down to the student level to see who actually made growth and who didn't, but these numbers are compiled of everyone.
But the score I guess my question is, the score that means met expectations in 2022 is the same score that met expectations in 2023.
Correct.
It changes a little bit. They norm the test, so they set cut scores each year
based on your
where it is.
That's kind of what I was
districts
trying to
around. More TVOS than.
Well, no, they set after they give the test, they go through a process where they look at the test across the state for all students, and then they set cut scores each year. It's not a huge variance, but it's a little bit. It's bigger in a year where every so often they'll rework the test completely, and then they have to have a norming year, and so that's where you see a bigger jump, but in the cut scores. But the cut scores are where they say this is what exceeds expectations, meets expectations, approaches, or below.
They do that with screeners as well. Like, I think the norms changed in Ames Web this year. They're different than they were last year. Before I continue, I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Causey. He'll wave back there. He actually put this presentation together. He's our data and accountability and high school supervisor. So he does a great job. Just wanted to thank him for his work. So, did he leave? No, he's over there. Oh. He can answer all the questions. No, you go ahead. Have you ever another question?
No, that's basically, last year with third grade retention and everything else, I spent way too much time than anybody should reading kind of how they calculate these different.
The good thing, Mr. Lancaster, is once you figure it out, it'll change. So you get a new system to look at. I think one thing is, sorry, Ms. Skinner, I think one thing to keep in mind too is where it's easy to, is we have two scores basically that we look at. What we're going through now is achievement. So that's how did we do year over year comparing third grade to third grade, 2022 to 2023. So different kids, different third graders. The state also compiles a growth number where they take your students, like you scored a 600 this year, we're going to project you 615, 620. If you go above 620, say, then you're a 4 or 5 on growth. If you hit that projection, then you're a 3. If you go below it, you're a 2 or a 1. So in Tennessee, we look at overall achievement levels, what percentage are meet or exceeds, and then also are students growing. So.
I didn't mention on the ELA slide because the data is not broken down that way, but we actually had the highest scores we ever had in third grade for ELA. Even, it was astronomical growth for them because we had a focus on it, right, because of third grade retention. So that was a celebration for third graders. And then in our meetings this week with leaders digging through their data, they have very intentional plans. They know their data inside and out, and so we're excited to see where this is going to go further. But looking at math, you can see that we did improve in the exceeded and met expectations together. And then that number ticked up just a tiny bit in the below from 15.9 to 16. But you can compare those graphs that way. Science, 2022, 51.7 to 56. And then those numbers continually decrease in the other bars. So you want your red bar to decrease and your pink bar to increase. And you want everything to go up in uniform. And then the purple and the blue, that's where we want our kids to perform in the proficient or met or exceed expectations. So we did well in science. Social studies, you can see in 2022, 57% were met expectations or exceeded, and then in 2023, 59.3. It also decreased in that below proficient. So in 2022, 14.1% of our children scored there, and in 2023, we decreased that to 12.7. Algebra 1 ticked up quite a bit here, so 30.8 in 2022, and then 34.4 in 2023, and then decreased that below proficient as well from 46.2 to 39. When you look at TBOS in a minute, the difference between ELA and math, you'll see the growth scores and how they make sense. Algebra 2, in 2022, 35.5 in the met expectations or exceeded, and that went up to 37.9, and then decreased the below proficient from 36.1 to 34.8. Geometry, we went down just a little bit, so 39.6 in met expectations and exceeded, we dropped to 37.7, and then that red bar ticked up just a little bit, or actually a lot, from 33.7 to 37.9. So ELA and geometry are the two areas where we did not hit our growth, but we still outperformed the state in achievement. English 1, 38.9 in 2022 to 42.1 in 2023, and then decreasing quite a bit from 8.1 to 4.6 in that below proficient. English 2, 51.9 in 2022, 52.9 in 2023. We did go down in the below proficient, not a lot, but we did go down. So we'll take every data point that we can. So from 12.8 to 12.7. Biology, 49.8 in met expectations or exceeded, went up to 50.6. And then we also decreased that lower quintile from 18.1 to 15.8. You can see too in 2022 the met expectations was at 9.1, so that bar is higher in 2023 at 9.9, so that's a good thing. That means we moved kids from the approaching to the met expectations. U.S. history went down just a little bit in met expectations and exceeded from 45. No, we went up. I'm sorry. That was we only went down in 2, ELA and geometry. I know this. So 45.4 to 47.6, and then decreased that lower quintile from 21.7 to 19.7.
Ms. Skinner.
Ms. Skinner?
Yeah.
Ms. Andrews?
On that for U.S. history, I know that is one of our courses that we actually offer AP U.S. history. So those student scores would not be included in this. Is that correct?
That's correct. So AP US History has a different course code, so they take the AP exam. They do not take the
EOC
end of course exam.
So this is the TVOS slide. So this is where you're going to see growth. So if you look at that first set of numbers where it says system-wide composite, and then you have a system-wide literacy, a system-wide numeracy, and so on. So if you look at system-wide numeracy, we're a level 4. That means we met our projected growths in almost all of those areas. Probably not a level 5 because of that little dip in geometry that was just that 0.2. When you look at literacy, system-wide, we're a level 1. So we did not meet our growth scores. Even though our achievement levels were higher than they were last year, our students did not meet their projected growth. So we did better, but we didn't do better enough to get the 4 or 5. So that's where that 1 comes from. We've dug into data this week with however many strategic planning meetings we've had, 30 or so. What we're realizing, not in every single school, but in many of our schools, it's that upper quintile, your higher students that we're not growing. So we've done such a good job at bringing up the lower and middle kids to this standard here So now we need to focus on those higher level kids and push them to where they can be. So if you take that numeracy score and that literacy score and you put it together, that's where that system-wide 2 comes from. So that's from growth, not achievement. So that's the whole system. And then if you look at the second level of numbers, that's grades 4 through 8. So third graders take the assessment, but they don't have a growth score because they're our baseline. So fourth grade gets their growth from third grade, fifth grade gets their growth from fifth grade, and so on. So third grade is not calculated in TBOS scores. And then the bottom, of course, is the same. It's just EOC. Let you digest that for just a second. So here's some celebrations. We have 14 level 5 TBOS schools. So that means out of all the schools in our district, these schools were level 5 schools, so we're super proud of them. If you see a asterisk, that denotes that they are a Title I school. So we had, 5, I think? I think we had 5 Title I schools that are in that mix of schools that were level 5s. We had 3 level 4 schools, one of those being Oakmont Elementary, which is a title school. If you'll remember last year, they were recognized nationally for their achievement and growth. So it kind of does fluctuate a little bit if you don't hit those projection numbers. We try to figure out that formula every year, which we're not sure what it is. So your conclusion, looking at this data, achievement grew in 9 out of 11 categories when we compare ourselves to 2022. Success rates were higher than the state in all 12 categories, double digits higher in 8 of those categories. With overall growth was a level 2, we had 14 level 5, 4 were Title I, and 3 level 4 schools, and now those level 4 schools, 1 was a Title I school. Areas of focus to continue to be ELA, math, climate, and culture, with a focus on ELA, of course, because we want that system-wide composite to increase. We had one principal this week who gave us a great quote. He said, smart choices plus smart choices, small steps plus consistency equal radical change. And all through our meetings, our principals and leaders and their teams have very strategic plans on how to move the needle with their kids. So it's exciting to see the work that they put in every day so that our kids can be successful.
Skinner, Mr. Lancaster.
Thank you. First of all, overall, there's definitely things to be proud of and appreciative of everyone who's worked every day to get the numbers up. But looking at kind of where we are these last 2 years, 2021 has kind of come out of COVID. It seems to me, as kind of a data guy, that we're kind of finding true north again from a post-COVID world. Maybe another year to kind of get a true baseline. But as far as, this is great seeing what we did last year. Do we have goals like, hey, what's the next 3 years? Like, we would like to be here, and here, across.
Each of our schools, when they come to their strategic planning meeting, they have a specific ELA goal for a number. So they can hit a single AMO or a double AMO. I'll tell you that most of our schools go for double AMOs because they're just achievers. And so whatever, because this is cumulative data, right? So a school can look at their individual percentages and decide, I'm going to make up a number. So we're at 68% proficient in advanced. We want to move that number for next year to 72. If they hit that number, they'll be a level 3. If they expand that number, then they would be a level 4 or level 5.
Right, and I understand having it from a school level. I'm just more from a district level.
Yeah, we have district goals as well.
I would love to see something that we could get, that's kind of similar to those.
We can share our one pager with you that has our goals and our strategies and our action steps. Be happy to do that.
Just across the, like, hey, what, obviously those 2 numbers of meet and exceed are important, but just as important is getting that below as low as possible. Is huge. I mean, I would love to see that below 10%, across the board. But just an idea, and that kind of helps to when we're seeing things come across for instructional materials and things like that, just to have a, you know, hey, this is our goal, and this is kind of one way we're planning on trying to meet that, or you know, kind of match the funding with the actual goal. It's just, you know, something I would like to see anyway.
Yeah, I think we can absolutely. I mean, we have district goals that we follow. In fact, one of the goals for TISA is we have to put together a plan to hit 70% proficiency in 3rd grade.
Literacy plan.
Yeah, which is a noble goal. I'd love to get there this year, but we want to get there as quickly as possible. It should be something we push for every day. I think Mr. Lancaster, since fellow data guy, I think one of the things that's happened, Skinner mentioned this earlier, and I want to reiterate it, is a couple of things. Like, one, I think that we fall prey sometimes because we take, especially on growth, we take meets and exceeds expectations and we lump that together. The state does that. They judge us on achievement based on that number together. But what that masks is where each of those individual kids, like, you could be exceeds expectations one year and drop down to meets expectations. Well, that's lost growth. We have historically focused on those kids that we were trying to move from those lower levels into meets or exceeds expectations. And the problem is that we've been successful. So if you look at our TVOS numbers, it's split into quintiles. So 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%. Where we are losing growth across the district, it's a state and nationwide phenomenon too, but where we're losing growth the most are in those upper 2 quintiles. And I think it's because we've all been looking here, trying to move kids to proficiency, and we've focused there to the point of not pouring our focus in to ensure that our kids in those top 2 quintiles are also moving and growing and hitting their growth goals too. So, one of the best things, Ms. Skinner and her team have come up with a number of ways to do that. One being is just the hiring process over the summer. If y'all know Dr. Eric Bowman, he knows a thing or two about TVOS and data and moving kids to the highest levels. He's a tremendous asset to our department. He's working with our title schools. Dr. Sabrina McClard, that was principal at Wiseman, is one of the best coaches you'll ever see, and she's working with our instructional coaches and assistant principals and other groups for coaching.
Also a level
now.
5 school this year.
Yeah,
Dr. McClard School.
Yeah, and then Dr. Chris Causey is is phenomenal with data and accountability and knows all the ins and outs of it, and is really helping. In addition to doing that work, also helping at the high school level. High school is very complicated to unpack, and you have to look at, as you look at that high school data, if we wanted to boost our high school EOC scores, we would move away from block scheduling. That would be, we would go up probably 5 to 8, maybe 10% immediately, because we test twice each year. And so, for instance, in the spring on EOC exams, our high school kids test 3 weeks earlier than they do in the fall. So our kids are losing a lot of hours for EOC courses, but the cost of that, if we went away from block scheduling, would be the AP classes that kids are being able to take where we're absolutely crushing it. It would hurt fine arts. It would hurt, anything that kids take 2 periods a day, like fine arts, higher level science, things like that. Yep. So our question to this point has been there's not enough gain from just getting a boost on EOCs to warrant moving away from things that have been, dual enrollment classes, things like that. Like one of our strategic plannings today, the school had, I think, 56% of the students at the high school were taking an honors dual enrollment or AP class. So those are some of the questions that I think as we move into strategic planning as a board, we want to look at and think through. There's trade-offs on everything when you schedule high school. But in my mind, being able CTE, fine arts, athletics, everything like that benefit tremendously from the 4x4 block schedule. And it's not worth getting a quick boost on EOC scores to do that. But I just want to, I know we've got other questions. I'll turn it back over to Ms. Skinner. But I do think that her team is really probably the strongest instructional team we've ever had. And it's really strong at helping us tease out what we need to do for our upper quintiles of students. So I expect that we'll see significant growth in those areas.
All the way down to student names.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. We're putting a face to a name so teachers know who they are.
Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, I think too, one of the questions will be with, specifically with Liberty Creek, since they were only open a year, with them being able to have that growth, obviously it's associated to the students. And so it's student growth on that. So looking at that, is the schools in which we have a more transient population, because I feel like we look and go, okay, we've had this kid in 3rd grade, now we've got them in 4th grade. You know, if they stay with us, especially if they stay in the same school community, it's easier to track and so forth. Do we notice that that is more difficult in our more transient communities?
Well, anytime a student moves from school to school to school, that's difficult for the student, right? So we can track students that way, but yes, it is more difficult to get that growth because you have an interruption in who their teacher is, who their peers are, learning a new building, that learning the new culture, all of those things play into that, into their academics.
I'll say, I went and visited a title school last week and spoke to that principal, and he had, I think in the last week, 7 EL students admitted to his school that week. And so I just want to be sure that we give those schools where they're maybe not seeing, that they're a level 5 or level 4. Sometimes, when you compare across the district, you can become discouraged, or some people look and be like, well, that school's not as good. And that's not necessarily the truth of the matter, because each school has specific obstacles that they're trying to overcome. So I want to praise these schools and acknowledge them and the incredible work they are doing, but I also want to recognize those schools that maybe they weren't a level 4 or 5, but that doesn't mean that they are not busting their tails to
Exactly.
do things for our
So all of our Title I schools, we didn't have a title school that was below a level 3 in growth, and so that's when you think about those populations, they actually thrive in the area of growth. Achievement is where they struggle more. So they do a really good job at achieving that growth.
Yeah, and I think Ms. Sanders picked up on your point. Like, you take a school, so on achievement measures, you're comparing your 3rd graders year over year, your 4th graders year over year, your 5th graders year. So a lot of times what we do is we look at a cohort. How do they do in 3rd grade, then 4th grade, then 5th grade? Schools that become more transient, like for instance, Millersville Elementary is now over 30% English language learner students. And even over the last year or so, it's changed to more kids that are moving here without speaking any English. So their 3rd grade population is not the same the next year in 4th grade, not the same again in 5th grade. That's where I think you see where it's harder on sometimes the title schools or the others, is in that achievement measure, because their populations are changing. If you track kids that are in Sumner County, they tend to improve year over year. We're just having to adjust to, and some of it's not even like economic disparities that leads. I mean, we have people that move here from all over the country with different, for a multitude of reasons, and it's the changing nature of our system that we're learning how to address.
And our WIDA data wasn't represented in this slide deck, but our EL kids did really, really well this year overall.
I also just want to say thank you for the acknowledgement of that we need to also focus on our high achieving students. We've done great with AP and giving those kids opportunities and so forth. Dr. Langford can tell you, though, that I'm competitive, and every year when I see Williamson County posted how many national merit finalists they have, and then I see how many we have, we can do better. Our students are just as smart and deserve the same opportunities. So I'm glad to hear that that's something that we're going to look for, and I hope that that's part of that process, is that we are going to push those kids to realize that there are greater achievements that they can aim for, and that we will help them through those processes.
Absolutely.
Ms. Andrews? That's all. Thank you, Ms. Skinner. And Dr. Langford, you still have the floor.
Yes, I'm going to go quickly to the next two, but they're also very important. September is Suicide Awareness Month. Our communities have been hit in this school year by a couple of suicides. Robertson County, White House Heritage High School had a suicide about 3 weeks ago. It's a very present reality. We've talked a little bit about the mental health crisis in our country and in our schools, and sadly, students taking their own lives is a part of that epidemic that we're seeing now. I hope everyone received this. I sent an email. Ms. Brown put together some resources for us to share with parents. The number one thing that everybody needs to do is be aware. I had the privilege, Ms. Brown's team has put together, I think it was 2 Fridays ago, I got to speak to them. We had 200 students from Sumner County high schools that are serving as peer mentors to their school. And when I had the opportunity to talk to them, it was great to see, one, their dedication to wanting to help their classmates. And when we talk, the number one thing they can do is be aware. Talk, ask questions, sit with kids that are alone, be aware of what's going on. And if there is something, raise awareness with an adult. We have a lot of things in place. When we get word that a student is having suicidal ideations, we are usually able to help them the overwhelming majority of the time. But one is too many. And we've got to all work together to address the needs of our students, and that takes everybody working together. So we want to continue to push out those resources to parents and families, and continue to encourage, teacher training, parent trainer training, but beyond training, conversations. If you see something that's not right, mention it to an adult. Would rather be wrong 1,000 times than right once and miss something. So I just want to make you aware of that. If y'all have any questions from constituents or anybody reaches out to you, just please forward those to me, and I'll get them to Ms. Brown and the appropriate people.
Mr. Wise.
Yeah, I think, Dr. Langford, I think I heard you say that at our high schools, we have leaders in our schools who are mentoring their classmates.
Mm-hmm.
I know that middle school is probably the toughest grade brand that kids go through.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, could we use some of those high school leaders to go to middle schools and include middle school students in what they're working to do? I just think that middle school is probably where it starts. So I think we need to focus some attention at that grade level as well. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Actually, the event that Dr. Langford was attending was training for the high school leaders to be able to go into the middle schools and do education as well there. They're doing things around, obviously, substance abuse prevention, bullying prevention, suicide prevention. It all goes together, really just about building healthy students and making our schools safer and better places to be.
I knew you'd be a step ahead of me.
Well,
Thanks.
and Mr. Wise, I think I can remember, I had a student at White House, and she would, I'd have her speak to the freshmen every year. And there was probably 200 people in her class, and she was probably ranked about 137th. But what she would say is like, I love health sciences. I want to be a nurse, but I'm spending my high school time digging out of a hole that I created my freshman and sophomore year. Like, I'm not getting to take all the health science classes I could take right now because I'm having to make up English 1 and English 2 and things like that. And it was always so powerful for our kids to hear, one, you may make a mistake and you may fail a class and you can recover from it. But two, try to avoid that, and you'll be able to, the payoff of being able to get into classes that you're really excited about for your career are there. And I think I'm excited, beyond academics, for social, like having those high school kids come in and serve as role models is powerful.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, I heard Mr. Wise make the comment that, he thinks maybe some of this stuff starts in middle school, and I wonder if it, I think it starts way before then. I heard, I think we've probably all seen the Marvel movie Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, and heard those kind of comments. And, I look at some of the suicides this year, and these are, I think, freshmen. And at least I think in Robertson County, at least. So these are young kids that are taking their life, and we had a generation back during World War II that we referred to as kind of the golden generation, right? These people that stepped up in crisis, and I sometimes wonder if we're the failed generation, because if we look at how we treat each other, the way we talk to each other, the things we say to each other. Our kids see that. When we bully people online, on Facebook, on social media, in person, on the radio, our kids see that, and they think that's okay. There's a video that was going around today about a 52-year-old man that died at the New England Patriots football game because he got in a fight with another fan. And I look at stuff like that, and I'm like, what are we doing? Because our kids see this. and they take it and they see us do it. They see what we say. They take it online. They think bullying's okay. They think the things that they say. Some of the signs that you see out there in people's yards, whether they're political, and some of the things that we say to each other, it's destroying our country. And I think, it's not just, mental health is a big part of that, but our generation and what kids are seeing us do and how we treat other people are a big part of that crisis as well. So I think when we're talking about mental health and we're talking about suicide, I think we all have to take a look at ourselves. And we've got to change the way that we act and the way that we treat people, because our kids see that. We may think that they don't. We may think that we can put something on social media and they'll never see that, but they know what we're saying. We may think we don't hear those phone calls where we're saying things about other people to our friends that maybe that other person will never hear, but they hear that. And they think that's acceptable. And I hear principals I talk to all the time in elementary and middle school saying some of the things they hear kids see and they have to talk to them about are things that they never imagined that would come out of those kids' mouths, but it's coming from the homes. And so I think just as an adult, we've got to do a better job. And we're just as responsible for this as the kids themselves. So thank you.
Mr. Daniels, Mr. Gregory?
It's a much bigger excuse me, it's a much bigger problem now than I even realized it was when school started this year. I know from our county, other counties, other states that are nearby, it's a major issue. I was thinking when our state legislature met that they didn't pursue some of the things I thought they should have, but now I realize they pursued what they should have pursued, and that's the mental illness or suicide prevention or so.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Ms. Andrews?
Yeah. Question, Steve. What do we have in place for parent education? I think that fully support with our students, being peers and so forth. But that's also a heavy burden that we're going to ask our students to carry. That we also need to partner with parents. We need to be able to inform parents of things to look for. We've heard about different TikTok challenges and things that have gone on that unfortunately, I'll look at it. Kids are stupid. They just do stupid stuff. I did stupid stuff when I was a kid too, but it's a different time, and a lot of times those things weren't, praise the Lord, they weren't life altering, but we're now in an age where with technology and so forth, those stupid ideas run rampant and they get spread and then somebody jumps on it and so forth. And so do we have things in place to be able to inform parents, hey parents, this is something that's going on, you need to look for this, or this is, if your kids are saying this or using, if you say KYS, parents need to understand that they're telling kids that they need to kill themselves. Like, that's not anything else. They may tell you it's something else, but they're looking at their peers and telling them to kill themselves. That's not okay. And we need to have those conversations with our kids about why that's not okay, and just to bring it to light. Like, do you realize this is, and sometimes, they talk in so many, in teen jargon and whatever, that they don't process the lasting effects of it. So do we have things in place for parents that we can share with parents, or do we have events or any of those things that we can do to help?
Yes, we do periodically have events, but every month we have what's called a calendar of causes, and every month throughout the year there's a different cause that we send out resources to the schools, and then the schools can share that with their parent community. Obviously, September is Suicide Awareness Month, and there were resources that are meant for the classroom, for the teachers, and then for the parents as well to be shared. We do that every month. There's things around kindness, which is going to touch into those things. There's things around internet safety, digital citizenship is sort of what they call that these days, around how you treat other people in that digital space. And we certainly share resources about that. We have held community-based events, parent events. Depending on the school, schools will invite us to build a program. Some schools do that on their own. And that may be a combination of a suicide prevention group, a suicide awareness group, an internet safety group. We work with a lot of different organizations that can address that, and we're always willing to do more. So yes, we do. And I will say one of the most powerful ways that we equip parents is when we find a student in need, we call that parent and say, hey, we've noticed something, even if it's just they've typed KMS in their search bar, I want a KMS, which means kill myself. We call that household and say, hey, you need to have a conversation with your child. Maybe this was a joke, maybe it was just inappropriate conversation, whatever, but we raise that awareness for that conversation between the child and the parent, and then we give them specific resources to be able to support their child.
Thank you. I would like to maybe make the recommendation, since we have, obviously we have social media, and that's a way a lot of people can, connect, especially, even parents and so forth. We do have the Facebook page. Would it be something that we could consider maybe even quarterly, that we have something like where we address a big topic,
Sure.
such as that, where we can say, hey, and whether it be a Facebook Live and bring people in, and or something, and say, and for parents to ask questions, because I think sometimes this can be such a taboo subject that even if they have a child that is struggling, they don't know where to go, they don't know who to ask, they don't want to be judged, but that we can open the lines of communication, because as we learn, if we're all in this together, let's be in this together, and let's help each other, let's be understanding, let's be compassionate, and let's find the resources and say, hey, if you've got a student that's struggling, here are the resources in our community, because so many don't, or they don't know where to go for counseling, or who to see, or who's on a sliding scale, or who takes insurance and who doesn't, and so forth. So if we could maybe consider doing that, quarterly, I think would be great. Just, and like I said, it doesn't always have to be on suicide, but just some of these hot topic parenting, we all need, we got to grow our village.
Ms. Andrews. Mr. Wise. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lacy. I hadn't spoken.
He had his light on first, I believe. Okay. I guess Ms. Brown or Dr. Langford, our funding for mental health, has it gone up or down over the years? Do we fund mental health properly?
We do. Mental health is actually we have the social work program, where our crisis social workers, that's who actually makes those phone calls to parents and says, hey, somebody has identified that your child's in need. That program has been expanded over the last 5 years. There are 8 social workers serving the district in that capacity. We have others that do other things. And then also the safety money is actually about mental health supports as well, because a healthy child mentally is a safe child. They're not likely to hurt themselves or others, and so it tends to be part of the same pot of money, and so student supports and school safety are a natural component, but it has been well supported locally and by the state.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Mr. Wise.
Thank you. Normally, Mr. Andy Brown, our Assistant Director for Maintenance and Facilities, is the one that receives the board's shout out. But tonight, I just want to give a shout out to Miss Katie Brown. I just want you to know your work is extremely appreciated. It's extremely important. It is vital. And I want you to know you're appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Back to you, Dr. Langford.
All right. Last thing along those lines of, we're not going to sugarcoat things, so I'm just going to say this, and I don't necessarily have an answer right now, but it's something we got to work on together. School board, central office, schools, parents, kids, everybody. We've got a huge problem right now with THC vapes. Huge problem. We are seeing them at every school in the county. They're illegal, but if you walk into almost any store that sells them, they'll sell them to you regardless of your age. We've had about 37 so far this year, kids. The bad thing is it's, our culture has become very permissive on marijuana, but regardless of anyone's feelings on that, these devices are being handed out to or they're being, found by minors, and they're in a very concentrated form. So we're seeing kids that are having seizures, they're having allergic reactions, because you have no idea what's in these things. I'm terrified that we're going to get one laced with fentanyl or something like that. And, our SROs, we've got testing kits to find them. We're looking to pilot some vape sensor things, but really at that point, what we're doing is moving into the business of identifying kids and figuring out the appropriate punishment and trying to work on rehab for them. We've got to be way more proactive than that. It's a conversation we're going to have to, I plan next month to, during Drug Awareness Month, I plan on doing, Ms. Andrews, exactly what you were saying, is to try to talk directly to parents, because I think most parents have no idea about these things. They look like highlighters, they look like USB thumb drives, they come in every form, they make them there's zero chance that they're not aiming these and marketing them towards kids. And it is truly a problem. We had each Friday we've had 4 to 6, and some schools had a homecoming. The entire administrative team spent from 7:30 in the morning until 5 o'clock that night dealing with the fallout of searching and finding these, contacting parents, working through whether or not they're going to be charged. We've asked on a minimum, we've asked our sheriff's department to consider charging where appropriate for the possession of those by underage kids. We are looking at, it's a zero tolerance offense. It's a fine line in how we approach this, because what we don't want to do is take a kid and remove them from everything that's healthy and supportive. They need to know that it's a serious consequence, but at the same time, it needs to be something that they can recover from. So we're in the process. Our principals brought this to our attention. Melanie Webster, also his resident Katie has been working on it. There's a number of us that have been trying to figure this out, but getting that right balance of rehabilitation with setting the tone, because I'll be quite honest, like, our culture and most people under the age of 30 don't think there's anything wrong at all with marijuana. And it's a growing problem that we're going to have to address, and it's only going to come. We're going to have to set the bar pretty high on how we view it as a zero tolerance thing, but at the same time come up with the right treatment and support to get kids back on track to achieve all that they can achieve. So I just want to, you'll probably hear some things about this over the next month, because I do plan on addressing it in Facebook Live. We're talking with principals. We've got to find a solution. R.T. Fisher was not created to serve a whole bunch of kids that are there for drug violations, but we've got to have a tool in our arsenal to address the needs of our kids, to, if nothing else, to teach them that it's wrong for a minor to take a prohibited substance. And I just want to give you all a heads up on that. You'll hear more in the months ahead, but I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's a real problem. I would encourage all parents to talk to your kids. Look for resources online, and then we're going to try to put some together to push out to help support parents. I'm sure that Katie has some stuff that we can share, but the number one defense is for parents to talk to kids about this issue, and just let them know they can come and communicate, because sometimes it is peer pressure. And sometimes it's our permissive culture. But regardless of what it is, it's really a huge problem for our kids right now. We need to address that.
Dr. Langford? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Schoenberg. Quick question, Katie. The students that have been caught or identified, are they going through the process set in place? Are they at R.T. Fisher now? Have they gone to the disciplinary hearing, or are you doing them individually?
Well, all disciplinary hearings are individual, so they look at the context of it and they make a decision. But we're just R.T. Fisher is set to rehabilitate, to work with kids that have willful and persistent behaviors.
Sure.
It's a lot of times kids that get popped for THC vapes are not kids that get in trouble, and they don't really have a very high recidivism rate of going back to R.T. Fisher. So the question is what do we do? We've got to draw a line to say that this is not okay. But in the process of drawing that line, we can't draw it so firmly that we put kids in jeopardy of going deeper into drugs because we remove everything that connects them to their school and community. That's a balancing act that's tough.
I was just going to add, pardon me, that we have reinstated our parent component for Marty Fisher.
Okay, good.
For kids that have a substance violation. So we have a program that is 6 sessions long where the student and the parent both have to attend on a weeknight. There's also another sort of sub-level of that is 3 sessions long that the parent and the child have to attend together. So depending on the level of their consequence, there is a family education component with that as well.
Is that what these vaping students are doing now?
Yes, they'd be expected to participate
Yeah,
in some
and
of that.
you know, and I can say one of the powerful things. It's got a different name now. What is it? Now?
Respond.
Respond. It used to be called Face It, and I can tell you, like when I was in middle school AP, I caught a kid with marijuana, and this was when he was an 8th grader. He went to R.T. Fisher. He came back when I had become principal at White House High School, and I was standing out back at dismissal one day, and his mom parked the car and got out and walked over and shook my hand and thanked me because she said I was mad at the time when he went to R.T. Fisher, but she said those Face It classes caused us to sit at a table and talk. And she had gone through, you know, she'd gone through a divorce, she'd gone through a couple other things, and her son was in the wind. And through that, they were able, you know, to develop a healthy relationship, and they were able to address the long-term issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these vapes, if you just look at them, you can't tell the difference between a THC vape or a tobacco vape, right?
Right.
So if a kid brought one to school and 5 other kids took a puff thinking it's tobacco, they could be in serious trouble because now they have just used THC. So that's an issue. I know I talked to Ms. Brown and I've talked to a few other parents. I know we have in the works, we're trying to find a good solid way for anonymous reporting by our students. I think that this is a good example of why we need that because our faculty can't keep eyes on every student every minute of the day, but the students sure know who's doing what and can be able to report. And I think just as peer pressure can influence a student who wouldn't otherwise do something like this, the fear of knowing that a student can anonymously report you and you'll never know who it was, I think can also deter a lot of this.
Yeah, I think part of that is putting consequences in place that help good kids have a reason to not do anything. I mean, I know like we drug tested, and when I coached football, we drug tested for years before we had a county policy. We'd hoped to never catch anybody, but we wanted to give the good kids on the team a reason to say, hey, I can't do this because I know I may have a chance taking a drug test next week. And it's one of those things. We want to put I agree, right things in place to support that.
Mr. Brown, Ms. Andrews?
Are we seeing there being a more concentration, whether it be middle school or high school, or is it kind of consistent across both grade bands?
It's both. It's more high school, but you know, I think it was 2 years ago we had a run in middle school, but I mean that was connected to about 2 families who were sharing THC gummies prolifically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I know it happens in both. I just didn't know if there was, you know, if we're seeing, sometimes I think we just always assume that it's high school, and then it can surprise us that it maybe is also concentrated in middle school as well. So I didn't know if they're seeing.
It can certainly happen at middle school, not at the numbers of high school, but it's certainly there.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Ms. Hawkins?
Question, and I just don't know the answer to this. Does vaping THC affect your blood test? Does it show up in your blood test?
It would depend. That's a very...
Or on drug testing?
Yeah, it would. You would fail.
You would show up?
It would.
Okay.
It, yeah.
And I noticed that we have the rights to drug test athletes. Are we limited to that? Is that through the TSSAA gives us permission to do that? Or?
Our board policy, the way that it is written, it is for athletes, and that is the parent signs a form when the student joins the team that says that they're going to participate in that program, and that's what that policy is written for currently.
So, but that's related to the connection to the TSSAA
it's an extracurricular activity, so we don't
Okay.
have to provide basketball. We do have to provide a K-12 education. So I think that's kind of the.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Ms. Hawkins? All right. Thank you, Dr. Langford. Next item on the agenda is new business discussion interaction regarding draft policy 3.600, bleacher and stadium inspection on first reading. Is there a motion? Motion to approve, but everywhere. I think I heard Ms. Andrews first.
Sorry.
And second by Mr. Gregory. Ms. Hawkins.
Sorry, I got popped off the computer when I went to policies. We were talking about the zero tolerance. No, I'm sorry. Beg your pardon. My computer shut off, so I was freaking out. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item, discussion interaction regarding draft policy 6.3090, zero tolerance offenses on first reading. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Mr. Wise, second by Mr. Lancaster.
I was going back and it took me.
Ms. Hawkins?
We're on zero tolerance now, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I had a question talking about threats of school-related mass violence. And it talks about mass violence, students shall not by any means of communication threaten to commit an act of mass violence on school property or at a school-related activity. Mass violence means any act which a reasonable person would conclude could lead to the serious bodily injury or death of two or more persons. There's sort of this loophole in here. There's no mention of any threat to one person in this policy. If someone were to threaten to harm or kill one person, shouldn't we have zero tolerance for that?
Okay.
This is the.
Our zero tolerance policy is related strictly to federal zero tolerance laws and Tennessee state zero tolerance laws. We don't add anything to that because zero tolerance is meant to be a limited consequence because it does remove a child from education. And so these items that are listed here are required by law. Of course, we have the opportunity to discipline a student to whatever level that we should desire. But the mass violence is a charge that law enforcement use. That's when a student communicates that they're going to blow up a school or bring a gun or something like that, that equates to a threat of mass violence. An individual threat is treated much the same. We treat it the same as far as investigative, threat assessment, all of the things surround it. It's just that this policy is required to list these things as zero tolerance.
And I was not saying to take any of that out. I was just wondering if we should add language to include that it's zero tolerance to threaten bodily injury or death of one student or one person or one teacher or one principal.
It is in our discipline code, and there's severe consequences for that. But in the past, we've just chosen that this policy is limited to state and federal law.
Yeah, the state law refers to mass violence. I think they're just trying to define what mass violence. We would still have policies that would affect a threat against an individual student or teacher. It would just be a different policy.
Ms. Hawkins, Mr. Lancaster.
Yeah, this is like they said, a new state law. This is actually what the TSBA worded the policy to be, and just not taking away anything of what you're saying of just one individual. I mean, but if you got two kids in a fight in a high school setting, and one's like, "I'm going to kill you," I mean, in the heat of the moment, that just doesn't necessarily, to me, rise to what this is talking about. And as far as this is a zero tolerance policy where we would not exempt a student, but expel a student for one calendar year, and two kids getting into a fight, just that, rise to that occasion, and that like is why we would have a separate policy to me on that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, just and Mr. Lancaster may have answered my question as far as this is just updating state law, but this is also, I would assume, just putting into policy too what current practice is, or would this have been considered part of current practice, or we are just specifically doing this now because of state law?
This is adding, this was a new state law, and so we're adding it into our policy as a zero tolerance.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. All right.
And Mr. Brewer, if we could, if the board's okay with it, we'd like to waive second reading on this because this is pretty important.
Who made the motion? Mr. Wise, you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm good.
And the second was Mr. Gregory. You okay with that, Mr. Gregory?
I think I did on this one.
Okay. Okay. You're okay with that?
Sure. Yeah. Use you.
Okay. Then we're waiving. The motion will be to approve and to waive second reading on it. So all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item is the one we pulled off of consent agenda. Discussion and interaction regarding item number 16 from bids and purchases. To get it on the floor, we need a motion and a second. Motion to approve by Ms. Andrews, second by Mr. Daniels, and now we go to discussion. So Mr. Lacy.
I did some research on this. I actually bought a Polaris Ranger back in December. You know, this is the cream of the crop. If you want to buy an ATV, a side-by-side, I mean, this is like buying a Jeep. It's like a miniature Jeep. I mean, it's four-wheel drive. You can actually push a button. All four wheels it's in four-wheel drive mode. It's extremely nice. It's made to go through ditches, creeks. I mean, it's the ultimate hunter's dream to have this side-by-side. It's very, very, very nice. You know, I think it's kind of insensitive, I guess, to purchase these for our schools to use, for our athletic trainers to use, when like some of our schools are in bad shape. You know, we got bleachers collapsing. We've got roofs that are leaking. You know, you could buy a golf cart that does that exact same thing, maybe for half the money. I just think it would be we would be better stewards of our finances if we would buy something that was less expensive. How many people do they normally haul on these side-by-sides?
Oh, I mean, they're used round the clock.
I mean, 2 people, 3, 4 people.
Well, I mean, it would just depend.
Or is it more cargo?
Both. I mean, if a trainer has somebody injured, they're going to transfer. But I mean, I think if you talk to anybody, any trainer, or you talk to coaches or anything like that, they use them 2, 3, 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day, depending on the season. And they're and I think the thing is not like, can you go forward with them with it? It's the fact that they're constantly used, and we're purchasing these for probably 5 to 7 years, 8 years, whatever. So I know schools have tried because they didn't have the money to buy one of these, and they've tried golf carts and they've tried everything else, and the burn rate on those, like, you know, what's bad is when you've got a golf cart that you charge. I mean, I had this happen several times at White House, and you get on the golf cart, you get the kid that's injured in, and you get halfway back to the field house and the battery dies. Or, you know, you're the third person that used it and it didn't get charged and you can't use it. And, you know, having something that we can count on, it's not a luxury when you're thinking about moving ice, water, medical supplies, insulin, sometimes different things like that, to different points on a school campus. And sometimes they are going, not necessarily through ditches, but they're going through different areas that aren't even, that you couldn't take a golf cart or something on, if they're going in between fields and things like that. So, I mean, they are heavy duty, and they've got the capacity to do what our trainers and coaches need. But you know, they're not going to necessarily carry an injured kid every day, but they're probably carrying an injured kid most days, and they're going to always be carrying ice and different things like that. And sometimes they're having to move equipment for injuries from one field to the other to meet the needs of a kid, of a child.
Well, like I said, I have one of these. I bought one. You know, I just looked on Big Country Outdoors in Bowling Green, Kentucky. You mentioned there's a 270-day wait time. They actually have, I know they've got one in stock, and it's almost $2,000 less than what we're paying for ours, and it's in stock. Like I said, I just think we could do better with the taxpayers' money. A golf cart would do almost everything that this will do for our schools. This unit's got 44 horsepower. I mean, this thing is a beast. I use it around my house to haul a 16-foot trailer around. I just really think it's overkill. I would move that we would wait to try to find something that's less expensive. Like I said, a golf cart. You can get a 4-seater golf cart with a cargo rack in the back. And look and see what our options are. So I'd like to move that we do that.
Amendment's been made to the motion to approve. Restate your motion, Mr. Lacy.
That we look to find a way to do this to save the taxpayers money, where there'd be a golf cart or a less expensive unit. I mean, there's the exact same unit 40 miles from here that would save us $2,000 per unit, and it's in stock.
Yeah, we could sum that motion up by saying, look for a better price on the product.
Yes, sir.
For a second.
I mean, that would be an instant $6,000 savings.
Okay. Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Graham. Discussion on the amendment. Ms. Andrews, I saw you first.
Yeah, I would like to just respectfully disagree with your opinion on these. I know that I have been on campuses. I've seen these in action. I'm obviously very familiar with the beach campus and how it's laid out and so forth. I know the other night that I was there, I saw our athletic trainer coming from the soccer field. The way the campus is, that you have to come down Access Road with that. Golf cart is not going to be adequate. I know at the Portland game, they used theirs to get the player off the field. He had hurt his ankle. And so instead of putting an ambulance or so forth on the field, it's a minor injury, but they were able to then transport him over and do and attend to him medically. We've got other campuses that you just never know where on that campus somebody may go down, whether that's the band practicing or the soccer. I mean, wherever it may be. Our campuses are large. And I would hate to think that we are looking to save $6,000 when you're talking about a kid's life, or you're talking about, because if they have some type of medical emergency, you putting them on that vehicle and getting them as quickly to service as you can, it's going to happen 10 times faster than if you put them on a golf cart. It just is. It's not worth that amount. I 100% agree that they'll save taxpayer money, but not at the expense of our kids, not at the expense of our coaches, not at the expense of, a fan that's somewhere that may need to be transported. These are used all the time, whether, like Dr. Langford said, it's carting ice, carting players, carting supplies. The athletic trainer needs to get somewhere with those supplies to be able to attend to that athlete. I understand that we want to save money where we can. Like I said, we cannot do it at the expense of our citizens.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Wise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Within the last 2.5 hours, we have talked very positively about setting the bar high. And now we're talking about trying to purchase something that obviously is below that high bar, and I can't agree with it. Thank you.
Mr. Wise, Mr. Lacy?
Like I said, again, the exact same unit, Dr. Langford said we would wait 270 something days. The exact same unit, $2,000 less, that would be a total savings of $8,000. For the exact same unit, the taxpayers in our county are burdened enough. Like I said, I've said before, I've had people in my area that say that we do not need another Liberty Creek. We've got schools that are falling apart, bleachers that are falling apart. We've got kids going to school in cubicles, and we're arguing about state-of-the-art side-by-sides. It's an $8,000 savings.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Mr. King?
Is that the same model, the exact same model, or,
It's a premium. The only difference would be the color scheme.
So it's not a golf cart?
It is a miniature Jeep. I have one at my house that will go anywhere that it'll fit.
So the one that you're talking about that we would save money, it's not a golf cart. It's not like
it's just exact.
It's got the heavy duty
system, exact same motor,
okay.
Exact same tires, just a different paint job. $2,000 total of $8,000 for the taxpayer.
Unfortunately, we can't.
Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Lancaster?
I'm sorry.
Dr. Lancaster? Dr. Langford. It started with an L.
We can't, unfortunately, just purchase things without following our purchasing requirements. An item of this expense, we would have to go through a sealed bid process. The ones that Mr. Harrison identified, we can purchase off of a state contract for that price. So otherwise, if we do a sealed bid, we're looking at a month and a half before we can see it again. I personally, whatever the board decides, I'm good with, but we can't unfortunately go to Bowling Green and purchase something. We have to follow our purchasing agreements, which for the dollar amount would require a sealed bid.
Thank you, Dr. Langford. Mr. Lake?
They're not giving you a good deal. You're buying this directly from Polaris. They're giving you $200 off MSRP. I bought one off the lot, paid less than $2,000, less than MSRP. And you would get it quicker. You're going to have to wait 270 days once you place this PO. If you waited 2 months, you could still get it quicker.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. All right, seeing none, Mr. Graham.
Do these bad boys come with any warranty?
I think
Yes. It's in we can find out. I'm sure it does, whatever the manufacturer's warranty is.
And then I know it's for athletic purposes, but could other departments use it? Could SROs use it for patrolling and things of that nature?
Sure, like during the day, yeah. Its athletic uses would primarily be after hours, or probably maybe about, I'd say 1:30 on. It's going to be used primarily for athletics, but yeah, I think the SROs could use it during the day as well.
Who would determine use during the day?
Principal.
Mr. Graham, Ms. Andrews.
Yeah, I just want to also point out that they apparently have one that's available. We would have to go through a bid process on that, which means during that process they could sell it. If they sell at that point, then we have 0. This is guaranteed. We know we need 4.
Ms. Andrews, Mr. King.
So we're going to get 4 through this co-op purchasing state program. Is that right? Or whatever. Yeah. And then it would take 200 and how many days?
Well, that's the max lead time. Sometimes it comes in earlier, but they, could be as long as 271 days.
Okay, so that's a pretty long time. And then we could open it for bids, have a bid, and it wouldn't be if a company makes a bid, they wouldn't have a limited supply. If we're going to say we need 4, the company's, they're going to put up a bid for 4, and we put a time constraint on it. We say we need these in 3 months or whatever. I mean, we could potentially get these cheaper, but
I'll just
anyway.
say, after several years of watching Mr. Harrison work, he's really good at finding the best deal for the school system to get it the fastest and at the best price for taxpayers. He's recognized as one of the best in the business. So I trust his judgment.
I'm just concerned about the time. These wouldn't be put in service till next year if we wait 200 and some odd days.
Yeah, I'd like them tomorrow. Mr. Harrison's looked all over the place to see.
Okay.
180 days, excuse me, 180 days.
180 days, okay.
So, he's looked everywhere to find the best deal that we could to get them the fastest using our purchasing agreements.
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right, we're Mr. Graham.
Sorry, one more question. So we're doing this based on a pre-approved state contract with Polaris. If we did a sealed bid, is there a chance that we could get the vehicles sooner rather than later, as opposed to going through the state contract route?
Yeah, it's possible, but there's no guarantee. The one thing we know now is everything takes longer to get than you think.
Right, but there is a chance.
There's a chance,
okay.
Yes.
Mr. Graham. All right, we're voting on the amended motion. All in favor say aye.
Could you state the amendment?
Mr. Johnson, would you state the
The amended motion is to postpone consideration to look for additional bids.
Mr. Graham?
Can I make an amendment to the amendment?
All right, we ready? Ms. Hayes? No. Mr. Lancaster? Ms. Andrews?
No.
Mr. King?
No.
Ms. Hawkins?
No.
Mr. Daniels?
No.
Mr. Wise?
No.
Mr. Graham?
No.
Mr. Gregory?
No.
Mr. Lacy?
Yes.
Chairman Brewer? Motion fails.
Now, if you'd like to make an amendment,
I'd like to make a motion to set it for a sealed bid.
motion's been made to set forth a sealed bid on the Polaris rather than going through the state contract. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Lacy. Mr. King?
So sealed bid, I mean, do we have, did we explore that option? Because before we went through a state co-op, has there been
Our experience is always that it's faster to go through the purchasing arrangements that we have because they're set up for that reason, to move things faster for government entities. The closed bid, I mean, the thing is the sealed bid could be faster, but you could also delay it by 2 months and still get the same 180 days. I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. King.
And then open the bids, get the bids and stuff, and then depending on what they could perform, we wouldn't know that until it's. They could be faster, may not.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Graham?
Yeah, I think we're limited if we go with the state option because that's likely what everybody else has done, and that might be why there's a shortage. If, with the sealed bid and you advertise, you open it up, and then you have various organizations come to you. I hate having to wait 180 days, but I'm willing to invest another 30 to get there.
Mr. Graham? All right. We're going to vote on the amendment, the second amendment, to go with sealed bids instead of the state contract.
Yes, motion is to set forth. Motion is to set forth a sealed bid. And with that, Ms. Hayes?
No.
Mr. Lancaster? Ms. Andrews?
No.
Mr. King?
No.
Ms. Hawkins?
No.
Mr. Daniels?
No.
Mr. Wise?
No.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Gregory?
No.
Mr. Lacy?
Yes.
Chairman Brewer?
No.
Motion fails.
All right, go back to the main motion now. Discussion and interaction regarding the item of number 16 from bids and purchases. The motion has been made to approve and seconded. Been discussed. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Discussion and interaction regarding draft policy 3.205, door locks upon second reading. Motion approved by Mr. Lancaster, second by Mr. King. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Discussion and interaction regarding revision to policy 4.302, field trips and excursions upon second reading. Motion approved by Mr. Lancaster, second by Mr. Wise. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Before we put this next item on the agenda, I have a question for Dr. Langford. Is there an urgency for this one to be approved?
The only urgency is that we have employees that are going on maternity or paternity leave that would like to know. I mean, we can make them whole, based on whatever the decision is. So I'm torn. Like, I wish that we had a lot clearer answers, because I agree with Mr. Lancaster in the sense that it would have been really nice to have heard what TSBA was going to share. I did receive today, there was a superintendent's conference last week that I wasn't able to attend, but I did receive some documentation, but I think we'll get more when TSBA comes out. So it's probably best for us to defer, but we need to move pretty quickly because we just got each month when we go through, we got more employees that are going on maternity and paternity leave, and I'm excited for some of the things that we've talked about with foster and adopted care too.
Can we we've already approved it on first reading.
Right.
I mean, can you send out something that said, hey, the only reason we're delaying this is simply because we just don't know. I don't want to promise people hey, this is going to be
Right.
backdated as of May the 5th, and it comes out that it's really May the 3rd, and you've got, you know.
People that are left out. Yeah,
Exactly.
I can absolutely send an email and explain that.
It's not to me, I mean, I'm not speaking for everybody, but it's not a question of are we going to do it. It's just, I want to make sure we do it correctly. And it's anytime it's an HR policy where people are getting compensated for something, I want to make sure we got it nailed down and
I 110%
who's included
agree.
and when's included. And the call is next Wednesday, so it will be the next board meeting that we'll be able to address it. Unless for some reason their phones go down again and we find out 10 minutes before the scheduled call that we're not having the call. But it's on my calendar, so I don't know, is everybody else aware?
I can
call
forward
is
that
next
email out
Wednesday?
to everybody so y'all have it. Yeah.
Okay, before we get into any more discussion, we need to,
So my motion is.
well,
Sorry.
before you make the motion, let's let her talk, because once we get into if we defer the motion and it gets on the floor, then there's no discussion, so.
So I think what really the biggest question with this policy is really the backdated part of it. Sorry, I have a hair. Is for when this was approved through the state, at what point then do employees who have already taken leave, will it be retroactive? Will they be reimbursed? However, employees currently going forward, there's not a question, correct? And that's what we're waiting on really for the state to kind of determine. Is it, for your department, Mr. Ott, like, is it better for us to go ahead and approve it so that you know for that going forward versus, because I feel like knowing employees, there's a couple of times during the year that the best they can try to plan on when they're going to have babies, if they can try. Obviously that's in the Lord's hands, but if they have their druthers, then they would try to do either summer or around Christmas so that they don't have to take as much of their sick time. So I feel like we're kind of getting into the season where people are going to be, and we're getting into cough and cold season where people are wondering, do I have days to take or not due to their maternity? So what is best for your department? Does it make a difference if we do it now versus if we wait a couple weeks?
I don't think at this point in time it makes a difference if we wait. I mean, I'll be curious about what TSBA says about this. So we could wait.
Okay, it's not, okay. I definitely want to defer. The only thing I would ask is, so looking at our calendar, our next voting session would be the 24th of October. We do have a study session on the 10th. Would we possibly consider doing a special call before that just to address this policy? Just so that we can kind of get that out of the way? Would that be something we could consider?
I think we could absolutely consider that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be good. If Chairman Brewer's good with that, I'm good with that.
Depends on when it is. I'm going to be in Destin first week of August.
October 10th.
October 10th.
That's
We got
All right. So
I'm still motioning to postpone.
So we're going to,
I just had one quick question. I know the biggest concern, like everyone said, is backdating to employees to when the state passed this law originally. Do we have any dates in the policy that refer to when this policy goes into effect? I'm just wondering if any changes that, I mean, if I look at the policy the way it's written, do we need language in here that says we're going to backdate to X date based on what state says? Is that all we're waiting on?
It's the interpretation of the state law. It's not necessarily our policy. It's how the state law is interpreted, because the state is putting into policy. I agree 110% with the policy. I love maternity and paternity leave for all of our employees. I'm happy that we're going beyond just certified to include classified employees as well. I think it's a great benefit for our employees. It's a great thing. But the hard part, I think, for Mr. Ott and Ms. Brown and for the school system is that there are a lot of federal rules on FMLA leave, and this is not FMLA, but it's kind of connected to it. So we got to make sure that those things match, and I think that's the issue of the way that employees can take FMLA leave for maternity and paternity has to be spelled out by the state before we can really determine what we can say in terms of reimbursing or making people
So it's
whole.
more about what their final guidelines are as to what are the exact verbiage inside the policy, not
Right.
necessarily.
Right. It's not even
that says it's retroactive to X
Yeah.
date. So
If I thought it was something just as in terms of our reimbursement, I'd say let's go ahead and do it. But it affects a lot of different parts for finance and HR.
I'm cool. Thank you.
Mr. Daniels? Mr. Lancaster? You want to defer to the
Study session on October the 10th, just as long as we got till, like I say, as long as
phones work.
As long as the phones work with TSBA. If not, I'll just go down there and talk to them. Find out.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Andrews. There is no discussion. Straight up vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the general purchase budget. Is there a motion? Motion to approve. Motion approved by Mr. Daniels, second by Mr. King. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. King.
Yeah, I just want to point out that this item on the agenda is the one that moves the 15 million from the reserves towards stadium upgrades. I just wanted to let our guests know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item, discussion and interaction regarding amendments up to the federal budget. Motion to approve by Mr. Wise. Second by Mr. Lancaster. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item, discussion and study session items.
We've got a whole host of policy revisions reflecting state law changes that we'll have on the October session.
And we'll have this one that we just did. Give you, okay, yeah. All right, next item on the agenda is communication with board members. Mr. Lacy, we'll start with you tonight.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the school board to follow board policy for our director. The book that I challenged has been removed from one school. Thank you. But it's still at 2 other schools. It's got sexually explicit material, and it's got deep graphic child molestation scenes in it, and it's still in 2 school libraries. So I would challenge the board to please enforce board policy. It says that a parent has the right to challenge a book at any school in our county, and that lines up with state policy, or with the state standard. So I would challenge my fellow board members to please encourage the director to follow board policy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Mr. Gregory?
How long has it been since that book's been checked out?
2 months.
2019 at one school, 2016 at another, I think.
Ooh. 2019? No comment.
Light went off. Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Mr. Graham?
Thank you. I don't have a lot. I was talking to a constituent today, and I want to get with Dr. Langford and try to work out a policy on having BA and ABA therapy in our schools, have outside providers be able to come in and observe our students and then write a plan for the teachers. A teacher I was actually talking to a resource assistant, and she said, Mr. Graham, we appreciate you guys working to increase our pay. Everybody wants to be paid more, but what we really need is support. And what I really need is support in when a student bashes me in the head, knowing how to better deal with that. And the best way to do that is to have their own medical provider and an ABA, BA provider in the school setting to observe that student in the school setting, because these students, when they go to the clinic, and I have a son who's been in BA and ABA therapy, they can perform quite well in a clinical setting. They can really turn on the charm. But what you got to do is you've got to observe them over a long period of time in their home life, in their school life. And so I really want to work with you and maybe we can craft something that makes that happen.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Mr. Wise? No comment. Mr. Daniels? No comment. Mr. Hawkins?
Oh, just all the talk about football and athletics makes my mind turn to marching bands, and I just wanted to give a shout out to the marching bands throughout Sumner County and how much they contribute to the football games and the spirit, and I would challenge you to think about a football game without the marching band and without the music, and it would change the whole spirit, I think. So I just, being a band mom for many, many years, I just wanted to encourage people to listen to them when they're playing on the field and pay attention and give them the applause that they deserve, because they work very, very hard to be out there and do what they do.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. King? Ms. Andrews? Mr. Lancaster?
Are you sure?
Oh, you know, I'm good.
Ms. Hayes?
Well, fall is a busy time, and we've kicked off a great school year this year. Nanny Berry Elementary had a STEM night, and it was phenomenal. Just the exhibitions in the gym, and the kids are excited. The parents are just observing what their kids are learning. It was fun. It's fun to be there, to be present and connect with the parents, had great conversations. And it's just so fun to watch these kids demonstrate all the things that they're learning. Warrior Walk at Indian Lake Elementary is this Friday. Gonna be there, Lord willing. And the community works hard to fundraise. The PTO, the parents work hard to support the teachers in their school. So that's always so fun. And Bob Schultz, he has a really good time at the Warrior Walk. He's the hot dog salesman, I do believe, this year. So a lot of the cultural departments in our schools are starting their sale, and the moms will go on sale October the 11th at Hendersonville High School. I know all the other schools have their dates, and I get the most beautiful moms from the Hendersonville High School Ag Department. I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Langford, Frankie Skinner, and I know the principals have joined you all on your speaking tour throughout the county, but you do an excellent job of communicating. I appreciate the weekly reports, go out to the parents, and updates to the board on things that we need to be aware of. Communicating with the parents, the teachers, the staff, and the community. You've gone to Rotary Club, different civic organizations, Forward Sumner, and Frankie, you are an excellent speaker, though you don't think that you don't like being out front like that, but you do a great job. And I appreciate that. Your presence in the school, at athletic events at the schools. It's really important, because I've watched you, and I've watched you engage with parents and families. And they appreciate that. They appreciate that. Thank you to the board. I appreciate having the opportunity to be vice chair. It's an honor to serve this community on the Sumner County School Board. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. We did it. We made it before 9 o'clock.
Yes.
We didn't have to extend it to 10 o'clock, so that was good. My belly is growling. I didn't get any supper, so we are adjourned.